Good evening, everyone. We'll now call the City Council regular meeting to order for March 25th at 6 p.m. Please rise for the invocation and pledge of allegiance. Invocation be given by Pastor James Boardman of the Church of the Nazarene.
Father, it is our privilege tonight to ask your blessing upon this meeting and upon those who will participate, whether they are elected officials or if they are people from our community. We ask, Lord, that you would help us to realize that our leaders are human beings, and each of them have needs and have things that they deal with in their lives just as we do. But we pray that you would be with the council tonight, and especially with Stanley and the things that he has gone through and may still be going through. We pray that you would touch him physically, mentally, spiritually, and emotionally. Be in this meeting tonight, we pray, and bless those who participate. Give them the right spirit and the right attitude. May the words of their mouth and the meditations of their heart be acceptable to you, O God, we pray. In Christ's name, amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You may be seated. Mr. Clerk, if you'll call the roll.
Councilmember Gray.
Here.
Councilmember Spurlock.
Here.
Councilmember Sutherland.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Bernard.
Here.
Mayor Anderson.
Here.
Mayor, you have a quorum.
Thank you. First up, we have the consent agenda. Item number 4, approval of the minutes from March 11, 2019. Be looking for a motion. Don't all jump at once.
Okay.
I make a motion that we approve the minutes, but there are some changes.
It's fine. Do we have a second?
I second. I'd like to make a couple comments.
Okay.
Let's ladies first.
No, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I know that, actually, I think you brought this up last time about some of the voting things on here. And if you look at the first paragraph of the minutes where it talks about Mayor Anderson and council persons, this and that. And I think that we should continue with that format. Just saying, you know, that we have 4 yeas and then naming our last names and 0 nays. I wonder if we could just simplify that and just say the vote was 4-0 unanimous, or if it's 4-1, then you could say something like Deputy Mayor voted no or something like that. But I think throughout, there's a lot, most of after the first page, that it just calls Mr. and Ms., and I think that we should be addressed by council member or mayor. I know that's a minor change, but I think that that's something as an elected official we should have in the minutes, especially if people have a chance to read it. And there was one on there also, I think it was next to last page, where there was an error under the council person where it said Mr. instead of Ms. I'm not going to necessarily point out the name, but it was under F18. So I just want, those are minor corrections that I think we could fix, but I think that even with the city manager, even just saying Mr. Flowers, I think city manager or city manager David Flowers would be preferred if I so may.
Okay, is there anything else?
I did have something under F20.
Okay.
It says that a consensus emerged between Mr. Bernard Anderson Gray regarding the alcohol, but it really wasn't. It was Mr. Anderson and Ms. Gray that had a consensus. It was not Mr. Bernard, and if we're going to be accurate, we need to be accurate.
Okay.
Mr. Bernard and myself actually liked the 11 o'clock change, whereas Mrs. Gray and Mr. Anderson wanted to keep it as it is.
Can we refer that to as council members?
Huh? Yes, sure. Absolutely. Yes,
Okay.
I would like that very much so. Thank
Okay.
you.
And I mean, we are council members or mayor or deputy mayor. I think we deserve to be called that.
Does anyone have any objection to that? Okay. Do we need to call a special motion for that, or just have it be part of the change?
I would have to move to change the minutes.
Okay.
Read.
Is anyone willing to make that motion?
Can you
Change
just-
the titles?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll make a motion that we go ahead and install council members' titles with their names, and if it is unanimous, instead of putting everybody's name, we can just say, you know, unanimous vote, but anytime it's not unanimous, then we could put the council member's name who voted for or against it was single, and if there is two, maybe we could make it individual
Was that-
with title.
That include
Not
the
too much.
change that,
With my changes as well regarding the
Yes.
consensus. Yeah.
Yes, and also the change of the consensus under F20.
Okay.
I know that was kind of long, sorry.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any questions on that? Seeing none, we'll call the roll.
Councilmember Gray.
Yes.
Councilmember Spurlock.
Yes.
Councilmember Sutherland.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Bernard.
Yes.
Mayor Anderson.
Yeah. Yes.
Motion carries.
So I have a question to the city manager. When changes are made to the minutes, since we cannot put them online because of the ADA issue, where do the corrections go?
We will make a revised copy of the minutes that were there and place that in the record at that point.
I'm sorry, the
Get
record?
to speak up.
I even changed microphones. We will make a revised copy of the minutes and put them in the record.
But wait, in the record, what record?
The official record of the minutes.
But where does that go? If we can't put it online, where does it go? Is there a file?
There's a big book.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So if I go in and look at the book, it's going to be in there?
Mhm.
Okay.
Okay. We voted on the motion amendment. Now we need to vote on the original motion, which was to approve the minutes. So we've approved the changes. Now we're approving the minutes. We have a motion and a second. Is there any further questions on that?
Nope.
Seeing none, we'll call the roll.
Councilmember Gray.
Yes.
Councilmember Spurlock.
I wasn't here, so I don't know how to vote, but I'll,
You can still vote yes.
Yes.
If you agree with it.
Councilmember Sutherland.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Bernard.
Yes.
Mayor Anderson.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
Stanley, if I ask you to vote no on something, will you do so?
Say no.
Moving on. Citizens and outside agencies. We have Carly Camden, Marketing Business Development Manager for Peace River Center. Request a proclamation declaring May as a Mental Health Awareness Month. Is she here?
I do not see Ms. Carden in the audience.
Okay. Jerry, would you be so kind as to read that into the record?
whereas mental health is essential to everyone's overall health and well-being, and whereas mental health disorders affect people and families from all walks of life without regard to age, gender, race, sexual orientation, education, or socioeconomic status, and whereas with effective treatment, those individuals with mental health conditions can recover and lead full, productive lives, and whereas Peace River Center works to engage, restore, and empower those experiencing mental illness through the provision of a wide range of mental health, substance use disorder, and support services throughout Highlands County, and specifically in the city of Avon Park, providing mobile and fixed office outpatient counseling services, mobile crisis response services, crisis hotline, and victim services. Whereas now is the time to talk about the importance of mental health and engage the community in conversations about mental illness to help reduce the stigma and encourage individuals to seek mental illness recovery options. Therefore, I, Garrett Anderson, Mayor of the City of Avon Park, do hereby proclaim May 2019 as Mental Health Awareness Month in Avon Park. As the Mayor of the City of Avon Park, I also call upon citizens, government agencies, public and private institutions, businesses, and schools in Avon Park to recommit our community to increasing the awareness and understanding of mental health, the steps our citizens can take to protect their mental health, and the need for appropriate and accessible services for all people with mental health.
Thank you very much. Next up, under attorney updates, we have the amendment to the utility services billing contract. Jerry, I believe this is you.
Sure. And this is the agreement that we put on hold last meeting. I did prevail upon the folks over at the MCCA and INCO Utility Services to insert the required statutory language for public records into their agreement, and at the same time, will be accepting their transfer from one entity to another assignment.
Okay. Be looking for a motion.
Motion to approve the amendment to the utility services billing contract.
So
I'll
we have-
second.
We have a motion and a second. Stanley, did you have a question? Yeah. Okay. Anyone else have any questions?
I have one little comment that
Go
I
ahead.
appreciation under item number D, where we put in there in bold letters regarding if they had any questions regarding the application. I think that's great to put in there, so there's no way anybody could say that they weren't offered the opportunity to speak up or if they had an issue with something. So I think that is good to have in everything you put out there, that paragraph.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, we'll call the roll.
Councilmember Gray.
Yes.
Councilmember Spurlock.
Yes.
Councilmember Sutherland.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Bernard.
Yes.
Mayor Anderson.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Item number 7, revisions to the City of Avon Park Charter.
So I'll provide you all with the revision number 2, which hopefully is based on your discussion in the previous meeting, and so you can make additional changes or accept the ones that I made. Once you get it to where it needs to go, I'll need to draft an ordinance with the ballots in it, and break it down into individual ballots as best I can. So at that point, you'll review it again, of course, but I'd want to go ahead and give you another opportunity to make any substantial changes you might want to make.
Okay.
So this won't be the final, right?
Now, you have to pass an ordinance in order to get
Okay.
it on the ballot for November.
Right.
And so it'll be 2 readings for that at least, so.
Okay. Is there any questions?
I just wanted to add in, the issue with the person that had qualified to vote and then moved outside of the city, the language regarding the permanent residency of that individual isn't in here.
Yeah.
We still have to correct that.
Yeah, I agree with that too. It's under 2.0 as well as under 4.03 of qualifying. I think we should have something in there that once qualified as a elector, which is a resident of the city, that they must continue to live in the city through the election process as well as through the term of their serving.
So let me ask you, Jerry, because you interpret this as though they are to be an elector and reside inside the city, and very few people thought of it the other way, does it need to be changed, or can it still be challenged? If you do change any language to that, I mean, why not make it ironclad and make it very descriptive? Because that whole residency thing kicks in too.
Yeah.
Well, as I used to tell my law school class, any fool can sue for anything, so of course it can be challenged, but, it's a matter of whether they get very far and create any issues. I would look it over and see. It seems to me there was some case law about that several years back where the issue of being qualified and not qualified, came up, and I'll just look and see if I can find that. If need be, I'll give you a real brief memo on that.
Okay.
But what your concern is that the,
Actually, the town of Lake Placid has a very good couple of sentences that keeps it really simple. They have one regarding their residency as well in order to run. But I don't know if that's one that you can mimic without having to go into major research.
all right, I'll check it out.
But if it looks like it's good to you, then that could be changed in ours.
And so they still sought to be elected even though they moved outside the city.
Yeah.
And
That's why I suggested that they stay qualified by living in the city through the election process as well as
And through their term.
through the 3-year term.
what was the conclusion on that? I mean,
There
what-
was none. I asked for a memo and I was denied a memo or any kind of explanation. So
Yeah.
it's been, up in the air.
They,
Obviously, the candidate was not successful, so it became
No.
a non-issue.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, it could happen
but it
again
could
if someone
happen,
tries to
and
challenge
it depends
that.
who the city attorney is and who their opinion is at the time, or the city manager, or both. So
Yeah.
if it's spelled out that way, I think that it's
Yeah,
pretty
it just
clear.
needs to be clarified.
I feel the same way about charters as I do contracts. It should be as clear as possible,
Right.
so I will look at it.
Thank you.
Can you, when you bring it back to us again, can you make this writing a little bit larger, please? Some of us wear glasses and,
That's
I
why I
actually
kept my
didn't-
original.
I didn't print this out. What happens, though, is if there's when you print it out, if there's any comments to the side, like that I changed this or I changed that, the program automatically makes it small. But I can do is I can remove it give you a red line without all that stuff in there if you'd like.
I just want it a little bit bigger
Yeah.
so I can see
Yeah,
it.
as well as page numbers.
That
which
would
makes
be
it
great
helpful.
too.
I mean, I kept the original one that we had, and that's why I looked at that, because
Right.
my reading glasses need double doses.
Is there
I was, okay.
any other questions or comments besides that?
Well, I think, it's kind of a moving target still, so I'd like to add some other things to it because, I've been reading other charters and there are some things that I
Okay.
would like to at least have it be considered by council. So if I can just bring those back the next meeting, when is the deadline that we need to get these in so that it can go to the ballot
Need to have it in before June.
before June? Okay.
So,
So ordinance and done before June, or,
yeah, it's gotta,
It's
you have to have,
August 2nd is the final point at which everything has to be concluded.
What are you
August?
saying?
That's for Penny to have it on the ballot. Right.
On what day again?
August
August
2nd.
2nd.
Okay,
Right.
okay.
But we're saying June, so
Oh.
we don't wait till the last minute.
Right.
Okay, I have a question on that. Is it necessary for us to have an election for any other office? Is there any way we could qualify that we would put this off to the following year?
That was a discussion that I'd already had with the mayor, that yes, that's a possibility, but
Yeah.
y'all could decide if you want to have a special election for just that item, if there's no other people qualifying. Then
I
that
I
could
think
be
it's
done.
somewhere between $3,000 and $5,000 to put
It'll-
something on.
It'll cost about $4,000 to do an
Okay,
election.
now,
Yeah.
3 to 5, I was close.
So what you're saying is if no one runs for office other than the two candidates that are up here,
Right.
Mr. Bernard and Mr. Anderson, that if neither one of
Council
them run, we
Yeah.
still have it budgeted for an election anyway, so the money's already there.
Yeah, the other issue is that next year is a
General
presidential.
election, you got
Right.
So
more
you're
people
Oh,
gonna
so
have-
do you want to wait until
Right.
then?
You're gonna have a far greater
'Cause you'd-
voter turnout.
You would have a very low turnout
Yeah.
with just that one item on the
Yeah.
election.
Right.
It may not pass. You might have only 10 people.
Well, I mean, whether pass or fail, that's up to the
Yeah.
voters, but the whole point is to get it in front of as many eyes as possible.
Yes, absolutely.
Right.
The fair election.
And nowadays, without being able to put anything on the website, it just really, Barry, can you help us with this?
He
Get the
would
word
love
out?
to.
You got Mark here, too.
You want me to start a webpage?
We can't direct you to do so.
No, we can't.
But if you did, it wouldn't displease us.
Under some
Some of us
anonymous
wouldn't
name.
displease, 'cause you're not gonna say nothing good about some
Nope.
people.
Anyway, any
Well,
other
I mean,
questions?
but if we're going to decide to wait, then what's the urgency? I mean, if we're going to,
We need to have it ready because
have it
we're
ready.
not
Yeah.
gonna know until the end of July.
Well, the qualification for.
Qualification
Yeah.
is the end of July, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have two minor items I can bring up, and I might not have any in the future. One is under section 3.03, paragraph B, where it says departments except for police and fire departments. I think that we should go ahead and keep that in there, even though we don't have a police department at the time, but that doesn't mean that sometime in the future we might.
Absolutely.
So I think that that's good that you added that there.
Yeah.
what number was that again?
3.04.
3.03, 3.04, you're right, paragraph B. I just want to point that
Red
out that
line
that was
part.
in
Yeah,
there.
no,
Yeah.
I would not rule out the
Okay.
possibility of a
All
police
right.
department.
And then I have one other question, and that maybe because I didn't quite understand the removal of section 5.04. Is that something we talked about, removing that, or was not necessary? Can somebody get me up to date on that one under investigation?
Somebody mentioned at the last meeting that I didn't hear any contrary discussion, that they didn't want to do investigations, and so you get rid of that paragraph, I think was exactly what was said.
Okay.
Right.
All
I
right,
think
just-
that should be entirely up to the city manager.
Okay. All right. Good, I just wanted to make sure I was
Okay.
clear with that. That's
Anything
really
else?
the only couple things I even had.
Does anyone else have anything?
All done, Jerry.
Well, there was
Okay.
just one other thing, Jerry and I had talked a while ago regarding the conforming with our policies for our procurement. Should anything like that be in here regarding our procurement policy?
Well, you're speaking with regard to,
People going rogue.
I think if you adopt your procurement policies by ordinance, as I've suggested before, that takes care of that. There's a lot of case law on the fact that somebody going rogue, when you have an ordinance that's contrary, it makes it null and void. They call it ab initio from the beginning, so.
Yeah.
The only time you might take a hit is if somebody's already been paid something, getting that back is more a problem, but the change in the charter wouldn't modify that.
Okay, and the only other issue that I have is the inability to ask employees to do things, and sometimes, it's difficult to have a conversation with someone without having a accusatory type of an environment. If this council wants to have a request for, let's just say, records, so we go to the city manager for that, but if he's not there, who do we go to?
I'm glad you brought that up, because I had written that down, another example, where I had a problem with something in the city, that a businessman wanted something repaired, that the city, it was a city-owned situation, and contacted the city manager, who then contacted the person in charge of public works or outside, and that person called me and asked me exactly what were you trying to get accomplished.
Yeah.
And so, I guess you could say I had permission by the city manager to discuss that with him, but there should be something in here maybe that says, under certain circumstances, if we're driving down the road and we see a city vehicle and we see a stop sign knocked over, why couldn't we ask them, by the way, could you pass that on instead of making a phone call? I don't see reason why. You're not telling them to do it, you're just telling them to pass on the information.
Yeah, I mean, you gotta be careful as far as actually changing what the law says. I mean, we're not supposed to be giving direction to any city employees. In the case of records, as Councilwoman Sutherland brought up, I mean, the city employees have to do their job as it relates to the public. So whether you're a council person or a public person, if you go in and ask for a public record and you're privy to it, they have to give it to you regardless of your position.
But the
Yeah.
difference is, when you're a council person, you're wearing your council person hat and you're asking for something, and you're not allowed to ask for anything. So you have to go in as a citizen and ask for stuff.
What's
Okay,
the difference?
But that's
that
that's the
was-
point. How do you
That was not
different-
true under the other
No?
charter, and it's not true under this charter. I've clarified it.
Okay.
And I don't know who told you that, but that's not true then, it's not true now.
So-
That provision, that limitation allows for a reasonable discussion even with employees, investigating, what's going on with the city. Well, I think that there's something wrong here. I'd like to ask this person what they think. When you step over the line is when you tell them, you need to move this over here, and I don't like this done like this, you need to do it like that. Because
So-
you can't have two bosses in the commission manager form of government. You all handle policy, he handles the actual execution of the policy, and how he does it is, in every city, is pretty much the same with the council, with the commission manager form of government, is that we leave that totally to him, and then we do get an argument still as to what's policy and what's actually directing somebody to do something, but most of the time that should not enter into it.
But in executing a question, I guess what I'm trying to get at is, when you ask for something as a citizen, there's an expectation that you're gonna have to pay for it and all that. In the previous administration, it was stated that if any city council person wanted records, they had to do it as a body and have it motioned and approved. David has been, yes, absolutely. Mr. DeLeon stated when Mr. Bernard asked for records, you have to do it as a motion, and no one approved it. So he was unable to get records. But as a citizen, he could have. But my question, David has been very forthcoming. If I ask for something from him, he's more than happy to provide it. But I just don't want to get into I don't want to jam him up either. If I'm getting them at no charge and then the citizens are being charged for it, I have no problem paying for my records if I request them. And it's not the body as a whole, this council.
All right, so your public records policy provides for that. And as I recall, unless you all want to do it differently, all the ones that I've done have said that you can get reasonable number of public records. You all decide I have actually represented a city where they could never agree on that, so they basically said $10 worth of records, that's it. And I think it was per month or something like that. I don't recall exactly what it was several years ago. But, you can do what you want to do with regard to those public records. No individual commissioner or employee is entitled to public records for free, but is generally considered, good practice to allow that, for the most part. Clearly, if it's part of their job, as an employee or a commissioner, that should be something that they should get, in my opinion.
And in the past, the way we've done it, I don't know what Mr. DeLeon, I don't remember exactly what you said, Ms. Sutherland, but the council members never had to pay for any,
No.
records requests.
Well,
And
actually,
they-
Some didn't.
Oh,
Some didn't.
really?
Yeah.
Well, I never paid for any, let's put
Right.
it like that. Maybe I've been,
Some of us
maybe
did.
that's one of them times.
I actually, at the beginning of my term, requested actually for 1099s of all employees for the year 2016, I believe. And I was told at the meeting, which was over at the community center, that I'd have to do a public records request to get it. But the following month, I did get it though. But I was told at the time that I had to make a citizen public records request when I have to pay for it.
I guess
Well,
I'm sorry, go ahead, go ahead.
What I was saying was that in the performing of the duties up here, I never had to pay for them, but if it was something personal
Oh, yeah.
for me,
Right.
yes, I had to pay for it,
Right.
but not for my performing my duties as city council person.
And you shouldn't.
Yeah.
But all I can say is, you should have something reasonable to allow that, because it's part of your job. And even if it's not part of your job, and it's just generally considered to be a good form, that, because it might relate to your job in some way. But if it's purely personal, and, you know, to me, purely personal would mean having to do with your house, then you're getting that for free, you know, might be a problem ethically.
Yes.
So, you know,
I agree.
I think that as long as it's related to your job, it shouldn't be an issue.
So we need an extra provision for that?
I think if you want me to look at I haven't looked at your public records policy in quite a while, but I will do that in preparation for your ethics seminar anyway, since that's a
Yeah,
big
perfect.
portion of that. And
That'd be
then
great.
we can talk about it and hash it out, and you can, not at that particular meeting,
Yeah.
even though we're going to be publishing it as a workshop, but because you can't vote. But in the future, we'll discuss, in other meetings as to how to make those changes. But that's my opinion, is it should be available for whatever purpose, even if a person, another employee doesn't think that it is, it should be related to government. If it is related to government, the government of the city should be fine.
Okay.
I mean, people should know the difference between what's something
Yeah.
purely personal and what is business related.
Okay.
Okay.
Any
And
other
just
questions?
to add, sorry,
Go ahead.
some records requests could be very cumbersome and overextended that may be city business. I mean, if I were to ask for the salaries for everybody prior to the fiscal year and then ask for it now, it's not that big of a deal. You just push a couple of buttons on your computer, but it's very voluminous. So, but I mean, you could ask for something that is really, really tedious and time consuming. So, I mean, then that council person could impose a lot of work on someone at City Hall. I mean, it is what it is, if that's the way you're saying
Well,
that.
I think that, if you're going to, I don't know why purely public records requests need to be made, as long as there's a friendly discussion between the commissioner and the staff, which there generally is,
Okay.
that I've seen. But, I've seen a lot of times where they want, well, make me a list of this. Well, that's not a public records
Correct.
request, because you're producing a new public record when you do that. But nevertheless, I perceive that the staff would do something like that. Yeah, maybe I can read this with regard to your earlier question, this 2.06D that I've modified substantially. You want to consider this, because like I said, I don't see any room for somebody to make the argument that you can't talk to, employee so-and-so. I mean, it depends. I mean, clearly, if you're saying, oh, I'm just asking questions, but those questions are, why are you such an idiot? I mean, then, for doing it this way, that's a
Right.
problem, okay? Because then you're undermining the city manager's position,
Right.
okay?
Yeah, I didn't have a problem with what you had down there.
Now, I make it clear that you can ask anything, all aspects of city government, but that, that shouldn't be asked in any way in a manner that undermines the authority of the city manager, or the manager's subordinates, that is, the department heads.
Right. Does anyone else have any changes to that particular section?
No.
Okay. Does anyone else have any other questions? Things they'd like to add?
Nope.
You've got at
Ready to
least
move?
15 more. Come
I'm
on.
ready to move on.
Okay. All right. Do you have what you need, Jerry?
Yep, I
Okay.
do, thank you. I'm gonna send myself a note.
All right. Seeing nothing else, we'll move on. Item number 8, Duke Energy Utility Easement and pending Florida Department of Economic Opportunity Funding.
Is Duke Energy here?
Yes.
Yes,
we
they
have
are.
two representatives here.
I'd just like to preempt, if that's okay.
Yeah.
I had a discussion with a resident, I don't know, 2.5, 3 weeks ago, and I was informed that we're going to be getting these 80 to 100-foot power poles inside the city. And I just did a little bit more research, and I looked in the city council packets of June the 11th, 2018, and one of the agenda items in there was the sale of 2 easements from the city to Duke, each one for $15,000. In that agenda item summary was a contract that had been reviewed by the city manager at the time and the city attorney, who approved it, and then the council approved it. They spent, I believe, 140 seconds on that subject. But nowhere, anywhere on the contract that was provided by Duke did it state the height of any of these poles. So that raised the flag with me. I spoke to a couple of residents who also sold some easements of their own. I have not seen any contracts that these individuals have. All I know is that they got a letter in the mail that said that they were going to be within 500 feet of a utility pole, and that they needed to be notified. Well, some of those individuals showed me their contracts, and it wasn't mentioned in there the height of their poles either. So I know at least 2 residents that are going to be very unpleasantly surprised when they wake up and they've got this 100-foot pole sitting in their front yard. But nonetheless, I had spoken to David about it, and he said he was going to talk to Duke. I spoke to the city attorney about it, and he said he was going to look at the LDR. And I just wanted to make sure that, we're not trying to stop progress. We're not trying to stop development. I just want to get a handle on how our franchise fee agreement works, to where it appears that you can wake up one day and have these poles in your town and not know anything about it. Because certainly during the June 11th meeting of 2018, like I said, it was never discussed. I don't consider that a public meeting, because in terms of what they were doing, it just wasn't discussed. All that was discussed was the actual sale of those 2 easements. So I don't know what happened behind closed doors prior to that, if Duke had, commented with the city attorney at the time and the city manager at the time. We don't know, we'll never know. Those individuals are no longer here. So we're kind of backtracking here to see what happened, and my goal is to make sure that it doesn't happen like this again. I think that we should have a say what goes in our historic area of downtown, what crosses over our streets, and, the citizens, when they wake up and see them, don't be calling us and, freaking out because they had no clue about it either. So that's kind of where I am. I'm positive about it in terms of feeling as though that we'll be able to, move forward with it, but at the same time, I want to have control over what goes on in our city and not some other company.
Okay. Well, we have, go ahead.
I guess I'd like to hear from them as to why they haven't approached the city with regard to getting their land development regulation approval yet on having those poles here.
You
Since
guys
that
come up, please. Please state your name and address for the record.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. Jerry Miller, Community Relations Manager, Duke Energy. And so which question first? On the franchise, you want me to talk about that first and
What-
the rights in the franchise?
Just go with the flow.
process?
Yeah, just
No,
start
it's
wherever you
all-
want.
Yeah. So going back to that June timeframe and maybe the months leading up to that, there were meetings with the city manager at the time. And a lot of times we take our cue off of that relation, off that person that should we go to come present? And it was not, the packet moved forward. There was no request to come and make a presentation to the council. And so we didn't do that. But it did come in front of, you mentioned, you looked at the notes and it's in there. But
yeah,
you're correct, we didn't do a presentation to the council.
But you've gone before other cities before, and they've made you do comply with the land development code, right? I mean, that's
So our franchise agreement's pretty, the language on it, and it's pretty clear as far as our rights. It's a right-of-way utilization.
No, we can't contract away public the power of the city. The city is its police power. That can't be contracted away, and with the franchise is a contract. But aside from that, your franchise says right in it that you'll comply with all other laws, and that is another law. We're required to comply with it under Chapter 163 of the Florida statutes.
Right,
So
so-
I don't know, I missed why the franchise, but since you brought up the franchise, why does the franchise apply at all? Since this line, as I understand it, is not going to be connected to anybody in the city, but just going to be shooting through the center of the city and going to somebody else that is going to be outside of the county, let alone outside the city. And so we're not even going to get any 6% franchise fees or anything for you using our right-of-way or anything like that, if this goes through.
That's correct, but the franchise does give us the rights to work in the right-of-ways. I mean, that's
Oh,
what,
sure,
that's.
absolutely, for power poles and things like that that have to do with the service of the city. But I
Right.
don't know, I don't see anything in there that said that, and by the way, we can, run whatever we want through the middle of the city.
Well, it doesn't say we can do anything we want in the middle of the city, but it does give us the right to lay lines, to put poles up, to maintain them, to clear trees. And there, I mean, I think any transmission line that you would see, it goes from point A to point B. I mean, many times they do go through cities. But let me say, I do agree this is unique, that it's, it's an industrial user, but as far as it going through a city, a lot of transmission lines do go through cities that don't, they serve many other people.
But you're going to be cutting through the middle of the city with 100-foot poles and lines. I think that's kind of a unique situation. It should have probably been brought up back when you were discussing the easements and so on. But
But
aside from that, I mean, I'm not making that argument now. You're the one that brought up the franchise, but like I said, I still would like to talk to your council about why the franchise even applies in this situation.
Absolutely.
And
that would be best.
Yeah,
You got me at it.
I'm not here to beat you up or anything like that. I just, land development code, no matter whether the franchise allows it or not. And number two, why does a franchise allow it? And, do we need another franchise to allow you to run pipes or these particular poles through the middle of the city and not connect to anybody here? And so basically you're talking about not service, but just transmitting from one place to another.
Right.
I have a question. In regards to the franchise agreement, the premise of that whole agreement is that it's going to bring back to the city residents revenue from the franchise, from the tax, the utility tax.
And we collect.
So how do
Six-
we collect a utility tax out of someone that's going to be in Polk County?
We don't.
It, right.
So
and
then
the
the
counties don't
franchise, so the franchise itself doesn't apply because there is no fee that the city is going to get reimbursed for.
I don't agree with that, but I think maybe our legal counsel can talk to yours. But
Would that be something that Duke would be reimbursing to the city in that case? I mean, right now, as it states.
6% of the franchise. I mean,
It does for every other resident. I mean, we all pay a franchise fee. I mean, we all pay a
Right.
utility tax. So it would be equivalent to whatever
Franchise
any
fee.
other business has. But the whole contract premise was you get to do this and in return you give us that.
for the accounts that are inside the city, we do.
Right.
But that's what the whole franchise agreement is about. It's for everything inside the city. And what you've
It's for
done
the
is you've
work
gone
that we do
outside.
inside the city. Right.
But this isn't inside the city. It's outside the city.
The-
It's in
but
Polk County.
the work's inside the city. Right? I mean.
So you could put
some of
40
it is,
poles
some of
and,
it's not.
and,
Well,
and
it-
it just doesn't
It
make any
contemplates
sense.
the use of our right-of-way
Right.
so that you can serve the people inside our city. It doesn't contemplate, you using it as a transmission from a far-away point A to another far-away point B, and we'll just cut right through the city with whatever we want.
So you're basically saying that if these lines were going to Tampa, that you could go to Tampa if you wanted with them and that's it?
I don't know if that's it, but.
Well, it is right now with what's going on in Polk County. That's it. You put the lines in
Hardy
and,
County, yeah.
Is there any consideration as to what these poles are going to look like, or is it, if they were 1,000 foot, you'd be okay with that?
These are very standard. I mean, I've got pictures if, people would want to see them. It's kind of what they're going to look like. But the best example is a little further east on Main. It's not, I think it's considered 64 by the Catholic Church. There's a transmission line that runs
Yeah.
there. We rebuilt that, I don't know, in the last 10 years, maybe 6 years.
how
And
come,
those poles are, because I looked at the nameplate when I left the other day, and they're 120 foot. poles.
And those go north
Yeah.
through a grove, and then they
Yeah.
turn west onto Palmetto, and then they kind of stop out there near CSX.
No, we're talking about the lines that would go from their
Avon.
substation out by the high school.
Okay,
And go all the way across and then cut it back by the elementary school, Park Elementary School.
yeah, that's the one
It
that's in
goes to
existence
Avon
right
Park
now.
Yes.
North by, yeah.
So let me ask you, how come those poles couldn't be used since that infrastructure was already there?
It's a good question, but we're not able to use, to double circuit that line, there needed to be a separation for engineering purposes.
I have a question and
it-
a comment. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Go ahead and finish.
No, I was just saying that, I brought that up for visual. I mean, so those are 120, these are 80 to 100 out of the ground. And that one isn't, it's 120, but some of it's in the ground, I don't know which. So it's probably, I'm gonna say 110, along those. And it's a residential street. If you turned left at the Catholic Church, I mean, it's a residential,
Lotila Avenue.
thank you, yes, Low Tila.
And then it cuts through a grove, and then in front of the elementary school, which is Palmetto, and heads west.
Right, and it goes back to CSX line and then
Right.
heads north.
I followed them, and I saw where they went north. They just looked like they were smaller once you get into that area up there towards
Yeah.
north.
It ends, I think they're all about the same size, but it ends at a substation right there.
Okay, so those are
Lake Avenue.
impossible to be used for this.
It is, engineering-wise.
Okay, can I?
Impossible is I mean.
I understand.
Yeah, okay.
My question and comment to you, sir, is I believe it was just about 2 months ago that you came and talked at the Chamber of Commerce luncheon, I believe, right?
I did.
And you stated that Duke Energy is a community-friendly company. And I believe that, and I think you're probably the largest electrical utility company in the United States. Am I correct?
Larger, yes.
Yep.
Yes, sir.
So my question is, why couldn't you pick a better route besides going through the city when you could have gone out towards the truck route or some other direction? And it would have been a lot easier, wouldn't have obstructed anybody else's view. For you to be a community-friendly company, a nationwide company, I think that for the betterment of a small town like Avon Park, you could have made a different choice instead of going the direction you did. Has anybody thought about that process?
We did go through a lot, like the siting of the line. I mean, a number of alternatives, including that one was looked at. So when you're siting a line, a lot of things go into play with that. How many people are impacted, the types of home, is it homes, is it schools, churches, those types of things, number of properties. And when you have a linear facility like a old rail bed, the CSX, not the one that's active, but the one that's more inactive. I mean, that just is of all the things to consider and the things that you look for, those are like, yes, because it's an impacted corridor. It already has, rail, it's open, it's been there for many years. So linear facilities are really something that just kind of says that's a good place to put it. The fact that it goes across Main Street is not ideal.
No, I actually don't think that's acceptable. I'm really disappointed that you guys would decide to go that direction when you could have just as easily gone out the other direction and then come across the truck route and go to 27. And I'm a little disappointed that you decided to do that.
Mr.
Did
Miller,
you
who paid for the
discuss-
lines? Did you all pay for them, or is Nucor paying for them?
So when lines are constructed, depending on, the revenues and stuff, if you had it like a commercial business, there is a calculation so they pay for it, but they get credit for, as any commercial business would do against that cost. For the revenue goes against that cost.
So in terms of the utility taxes, who would be the beneficiary of that?
The utility tax on their bill,
Mm-hmm.
so it's in Polk County.
So Polk County will be
Um,
getting it?
Yes, there's no franchise fee because it's in the county. They don't
Right.
have so Polk County is a charter county. You're taxing my memory on this one, but Polk County is a charter county, and they do have a utility tax ordinance that started at like 2% and then went up. I think it's 10 now.
Were you in
So-
on any of the conversations with the prior city manager?
That's a great question, and I was not
Or the
able to-
previous city attorney?
No.
Okay.
Did you know at the time this line was going to supply Nucor?
Yes.
Do you think at that time she was privy to any of that information? I mean, it's obvious you're not in the swimming pool business. You're going to run a power line.
Yeah.
But I just wonder.
No, it was, I mean, so I wasn't able to attend, but I know exactly what the conversations were going to be because I was supposed to be there and just couldn't. But yes, I am confident, wasn't there, but I'm confident that drawings were shown, locations.
Was there an alternate route ever given to her?
There was not an alternate route.
This was one and the only route that you had,
Correct.
and that was given to her.
But if you had been requested to look at it from a different perspective and putting the route elsewhere, would you have been able to facilitate that?
We do work with communities.
I mean, is that a yes? Is that a yes? I mean, if someone,
Say it again.
if this had come to the council and said, okay, this is what we plan on doing, if they had been more forthcoming from the administrative end, and I don't know if you guys, if there had been a public meeting about this, and the council said, we'd really rather you just redirect it this way, would you have been able to do that, or is this set in stone?
I mean, at this point.
No, then.
Then. We're just talking about one other, I mean, I've only heard the, okay, let
Well,
me
the
back
ones
up
on
and
Main
say,
Street.
yes, that maybe there could have been working closer to maybe somehow reroute it. I don't know, like the whole truck route and around, and then coming back into the power plant area. I mean,
Is that still a workable dialogue that we could have? Is there another alternate that maybe, like you say, maybe not the truck route, but something different that would exclude Main Street?
I don't see that.
So this is done, this is a done deal.
It's moving forward.
Okay, so, and we're not getting a single tax out of this whatsoever. Polk County is getting it.
The tax would be from,
Where
I'm
the
not saying it's
location of,
substan-
right, of the
Well,
location.
but I mean, the infrastructure. I mean, it's new infrastructure in the town, but I mean, I'm not trying to say, hey, jump on board because of that, but I mean,
Would there be any way that Duke could arrange for the city of Avon Park to be compensated like we get for all the other agreements and for all the other residents that pay? I mean, you have a $3 billion company that's not going to pay any taxes to the city of Avon Park, but yet we have to have the eyesores all over our town. I mean, I hope you see that.
I do see it, but you're saying compensated from
Yeah,
what?
why can't Avon Park get the utility tax?
'Cause
I know
it's
we
a-
can't because it's in Polk County.
It doesn't work that way.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that. Did you?
it doesn't work that way is what he said.
Okay, I didn't hear it.
And by the way, you're extremely calm, thank you.
It just,
Not in
I don't have
here.
any
No,
more.
I
It's here.
I don't have any other questions, but for you, because I don't want to seem like I'm hammering you on
No,
this. So if you can
it-
have your counsel give me a call. so we
He's the
can figure
hammer
this out.
man. This is your chance to
I
ask
am
him
not the
if he
hammer
can.
man.
Yeah,
Oh, he
no,
is, not me.
No, he's.
I mean, I think
I'm not
obviously
gonna answer the
the
questions
point
there.
is the council's not very happy about the line going across Main Street.
Understand.
Made that abundantly clear. So I think what the point is if there is an alternate route that Duke is willing to go, that would be agreeable to us, I'm sure. We're trying to avoid having these tall lines going across Main Street. So even if there was a way to go underground with that portion or in any way to keep these tall poles from going across Main Street, obviously that's what's trying to go on here.
I know,
So-
Mayor, I get it, but I don't want to, just so I can get out of the room, I don't want to promise something. I mean, I'm trying to be
Right. And we appreciate it.
honest. And I mean, I can say I can go back and talk to the team, but, each one of the poles has been engineered for that location. That's why they did the soil borings. And I mean, they're ordered. Construction starts in July-ish.
So if Nucor came back and said that they're amenable to this project and that they would not mind redirecting it and that they could afford to do that, would you do that then?
We would have to have that conversation.
Right, because in the
it,
information that I saw from June of last year, it stated from whoever the representative was, I can't remember the name, from Duke, that stated that the sale of the 2 easements that the city of Avon Park had depended on whether or not they were going to go forward with a contract with Nucor that was going to be finalized in July of 2018. So they hadn't finalized anything until the easements from the city of Avon Park had been sold, which are the ones that would connect, are the ones that are on opposite sides of Main Street. So it
there was
seems
a
like
lot-
those 2 things were the things that hinged their contract as well, at least according to the email that I read.
So I think what you were seeing was, I mean, it's, I think you're alluding to things happen fast. And,
Yeah.
and instead of timelines, a lot of times they're like, you know, they're stacked. In
Right.
this, a lot of things were happening at the same time. So what some of the easements language was that I think if they signed, and don't, I think this, I mean, I'm 80% on this. If they signed the easements and we didn't build the line because they never closed on that property in Polk County,
Uh-huh.
then the city or whoever would keep half of it.
Right.
And the other half, but I think we paid half and then half when Nucor. something
Right, I
like
read that if the deal with Nucor fell
Mhm.
through, that the city would get to keep the easements, and
Right.
then you would reimburse actually $15,000 is what I remember it saying,
Yes,
something to that
so
effect.
that's
In other
half the
words, it was
30.
just this. But I'm getting at is, it seems that Nucor is who directed where these would go based off of the expenses that they wanted to go through, because if the contract with them was pending on the sale of our easements, it means that they had a say on where those easements went and where those lines would go.
Okay, that's not true. That's
Okay.
not correct.
But the contract was pending that. That's
the
the statement of
contract-
the individual in that email.
Yeah, the contract was, they hadn't even closed on the land. I mean, I don't know the exact timing.
Yeah.
But a lot of it, you know, we were moving ahead because our timeline typically is 4 or 5 years, you know, just takes a lot of time to get through engineering. And so we didn't have a lot of time to, like, for that contract to close.
Correct.
So we were getting easements, not just from the city, but from all the landowners. And CSX is probably the biggest one because it's in their corridor.
Yeah.
Most of the route is in the corridor, which, you know, if you, like, again, to a site selection person, that's really good. It's just not good when I get what you're saying about crossing.
And then my last
Main Street.
question to you is, I know that letters had gone out, like I said, to
Mm-hmm.
the residents saying that if the poles were going to be within 500 feet of their house, that they would be getting these transmission lines there. Okay, so they got those letters. If you didn't fall within that area, you didn't get one of those letters. But the contracts themselves that I have seen are exactly the same contract that the city of Avon Park received, which it just said that you know, Duke could install
Mhm.
all those adjectives
Right.
of what you all could do. Is that the exact same contract that was given to residents as well?
You know, I think everybody has their own attorneys, so I think it may get tweaked a bit. I
Of the
think it's
individuals I spoke to, they just signed what was given to them by Duke. They didn't have an attorney. They just got a letter, they got a check for $15,000, and they signed the check. I mean, they signed the contract. But nowhere on their contracts does it say how tall these poles are going to be. And they didn't ask, because I know one resident that said that he was told that it was going to be like the one down the street, and he was just looking at a regular 30-foot pole.
And I can't defend or talk because I wasn't part of the our real estate group. I mean, Duke employs, but I wasn't part of that.
As a person looking out and talking to those individuals and not having your side of the story, it seems very predatory that you would go to any resident and say, here's a check, $15,000, give us the easement, won't tell you how tall it's going to be until that person wakes up and sees that thing there. I mean, a lady that I spoke to was in tears when she found out she was going to have a 100-foot pole in her front yard.
But
And she was never told how tall it was going to be. She said, I would have never signed that had I known that.
so that would be surprising to me that she would
Yeah.
not have been told. I hear what you're
Well,
saying. I
these are
don't have any
individuals
reason
in
not
an
to believe that.
underserved
But
area of our community. Anyway, it's just down the street. It's on Ernest D. Sims.
Right.
You may need to go talk to them and do some PR
Sure.
work, because you have some people that are very distraught.
right, I mean, I would hope that people would do what I would do and ask. You know, I mean, if you're
You're 85 years old?
no, okay, I understand.
Yeah, but I
No,
mean, the contract itself does not give the height. It didn't give it for the city of Avon Park, and it didn't give it to the residents. It's a blank. All it
Right.
says that you can install, you pretty much can do whatever you want, because now you own it.
But the
And-
letter said it, right?
Oh, well, the letter that went out, 3-4 months ahead of time?
Yes.
Like it looks like junk mail half the time? Not everyone read it.
Yeah, I don't really see that
No,
part of
I
the
just want to
conversation
point that,
going
no,
anywhere. so.
you probably don't, but look, like I said at the beginning of my little diatribe, I know that this is going to move forward without our consent. I don't know if it is or not. I guess it sounds like it is. It looks like we're stuck with these poles across our historic Main Street. It looks like individuals who were told that they were just going to get a regular pole in their yard are not. And in the end, we're not going to get any revenue from any taxes off of these electric the electricity. I feel we got screwed.
I have a couple more questions, just real quick. Can you give me an idea of what type of franchise fee or whatever type of a fee you gave to CXX to have right-of-way on their property as well as any other businesses on that route?
So, I mean, we'd have got easement, not a
Easement,
franchise.
I'm sorry, easement, right, yes.
I don't know how much.
I mean,
they-
if you're only paying the city the same as you're paying a resident, and if you're paying the railroad or some businesses that are on there, I think I have to agree with Councilwoman Sutherland.
Just read that.
I think we got the bad end of the stick here.
I don't know the amount that we paid
Okay.
CSX.
If you could come up with that, maybe send a letter to the.
Yeah, I don't know
city
that that's a
manager.
public record or that you'll ever be able to get it. I do have, David was able to pull up, I had requested all of the revenues that we received from the entire city. This is based off of our franchise fee agreement. These are all the revenues that the city of Avon Park receives. We will not be able to add Newcourt to this list because they're not inside the city of Avon Park. So there's 0 over here on one of the biggest projects that has ever been done by Duke within our city limits. And all these people right here, well, you know, I'd love for you to look at it because
I mean, the revenue
Yeah,
numbers,
yeah,
it's
'cause to
about
me-
500,000 or so in franchise fee,
correct.
506
So
or
even
so.
if it was $5, we're still not getting a thing. And, you know, our downtown, as struggling as it is, and our residents, as struggling as neighborhoods may be, you know, it just seems that you would have never done this in downtown Winter Park. It would have never happened, but it sure as heck happens in Avon Park.
But there are other towns that have. I
But
mean,
we're here. And I mean, like I said, you could have put this in Tampa and we would have had no say.
There's been a lot of misconception. I mean, I
Yeah.
think there was a lot of information not given out that should have been given out, and I think
I would agree with that.
It was pretty good on your company's part. I mean, you did this without a public hearing. It went right through the city council. And I think she's right. It would have never happened in any of
It
those
didn't go
cities.
through the city council. Let's rephrase that. This never went through the city council.
Because you don't
Bernard
care.
was here and Garrett Anderson was here, and I'd like to ask them, did you, when you approved the sale of those 2 easements, by the way, that night that came up, 140 seconds were spent on these easements, nearly 28 minutes were spent on June Fisher's $35,000 raise. I just want you to know where the priorities were for your previous administration. But anyway, I'm gonna shut up. I'm just not gonna say anything else. I'm done.
I will say that my interpretation had nothing to do with Duke Energy on that evening when we voted. That's just plain truth.
Yeah, no, I mean, the first that I heard of, 80 to 100 foot poles coming through the center of town was, maybe a few weeks ago. Definitely
Yeah.
wasn't back then. But, again, we're beating a dead horse here on a lot of this stuff. A lot of what's going to happen is going to be decided between the attorneys, as you know, whether or not we have the authority to have a say-so in this
Right.
is going to be decided through that.
Yep.
And, I don't really see this being a very productive conversation. I don't think a whole lot's going to be accomplished by having this. So.
Mayor, you're probably absolutely right, but I think it's our duty as representatives of the citizens to know where some of us up here stood at the time and,
Yeah.
and while we were kept in the dark, and that this was approved basically without giving the information to the council. So we need to remember what was done in the past so it doesn't happen again in the future, which I don't think it will. And it may not be all of your problem, but I think that you could have been a little more considerate. But I think you're right. I think we're done for tonight.
Okay. Is there anything else you'd like to say? Okay.
No,
Thank you for coming and getting beat up. I appreciate
yeah,
it.
it's fine.
Yes,
You
thank
have a
for-
hard job.
Thank you for
No,
always
no,
being
it's-
here.
most of the time it's good, yeah.
All right.
Thank you. Now, the other side of this is talking about the Florida Department of Economic Opportunity funding for the water and sewer main extension. I see a couple faces talking about that. Do we have anything for that? Is there an update on the grant or?
No, this was, that language is included in there because it's intertwined. The Duke Energy, this is all one, essentially one larger issue.
Okay.
Having to do with
All right.
the development.
All right.
I'd like to add something to
I'll
the
ask a
agenda.
question too. I can hardly hear you, but the question I have is, how much money have we put in that from taxpayer money for the city of Avon Park for this sewer line?
Well, there's been no construction, of course, and
At this point in time tonight, how much money do we have in that?
I don't know. I don't think we have any money.
We don't have any Avon Park money in that line at all.
We have a bill against a purchase order that has been declined by me because
You're gonna have to speak up, David, if you can.
we have a bill for some conceptual engineering that was done from Posting Engineering for it, against a purchase order that I declined the purchase order my first week here because it was done against our own procurement policy. The purchase order was for $64,000, and that would have required council approval, which it did not get. So that particular purchase order has not been approved by me. It's just sitting in the queue right now.
Did you
Okay.
say 64,000?
That was what
We're
the
not
purchase-
talking about a generator anymore. We're talking
No.
about engineering.
That was done by one of our employees who thought he was acting on the direction of the council. That happened in November. And we're still discussing that in-house as to how to make sure that won't happen again.
I think it's the second time it's happened. I think that you personally should hold that person accountable for it.
And
I thought it was less than 64, but now I'm just really upset about it. There's nothing in that contract that says you can spend money before you sign that contract, and we have not signed a contract with the DEO.
I'd like to make a motion right now that not one penny of Avon Park taxpayer money be spent on that water or sewer line until it comes through this council for approval. Not a penny.
Well,
Because
you
it's not
can't-
going, it's not going to benefit Avon
You can't
Park.
anyway, because you'd have to approve the grant to begin with.
Well, the grant's not approved. We don't have a signed contract for a grant.
There's a motion on the floor.
But until we get the grant, I don't want any money
Okay,
spent.
wait, I'm sorry, we need to back
Stanley,
up.
did you make a motion?
I made the motion that we do not spend any money that's not recoverable, that we know is recoverable, until we get the signed contract with the sewer and water.
Okay. Is anyone else willing to make a second on that?
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All right, discussion. Continue. I believe you were getting into something else in addition to that? No.
I was just wondering if that was already set in stone like that.
What said?
What he just said, that they can't spend anything without any
Well,
project.
David caught, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, it hasn't come to us anyway, so he stopped it, so why were we making a motion on it when it has not came through us?
We've already spent $54,000.
No, he said we didn't.
No, we haven't.
No, he
We
hasn't.
will spend $54,000, but what I'm trying to get to, I want to stop the point that we don't have the ability, without coming through this council, of spending a penny on that line until we get approval to know we're going to get our money back.
That's, well, my
I made the
thought-
motion, is all I'm saying.
Yeah, I understand that. My thought is that since the city manager has already put a stop to it, and the procurement policy says there's a certain amount that the city manager can spend without it coming through us anyway, is what I'm saying.
I believe it's 25,000.
Yeah, so it would have to come through us anyway. I'm just thinking that now. I might be wrong, but.
I think his point, Ms. Gray, was mainly because it was done without our permission before. Second time now.
Yeah.
That's his point.
Well, I think there's there's possibly some misinformation. There's definitely some questions about this whole entire grant process. And I was hoping, would Megan be willing to speak on that? Just kind of get us up to date as to where we are with this whole grant process, and if everything is going smoothly, if there's things we need to do.
Right. So I'm Megan DiGiacomo. I'm with the Economic Development Office with Highlands County. The grant it was approved. If we want to move forward with it, it needs to be agreed upon before the end of the state fiscal year. Otherwise, the almost $1 million goes back into the general fund and is just not used, and it could have gone to another community. There's $85 million in grants for infrastructure and workforce that was divvied out last year. Our office worked closely with the city and the Central Florida Regional Planning Council to apply for this grant. Again, it's nearly $1 million and does not require any local matches. Sometimes with grants, you might have to have some input, but from my understanding, there might be some money in the infrastructure side of the world, and I'm not going to speak for any staff. From my understanding with the agreement, and I have urged city staff to work with the city attorney to talk with DEO's counsel, because I'm by no means an attorney, I would say, speak to them about what language can or cannot be written about expenses that need to go into it. I'm under the understanding that when the city was drafting the amount that was requested, there is a section that is allotted for engineering and design. So if you work with council and DEO, I imagine that you might be able to count that in for the reimbursement. But it's a conversation that should be had. I can't have those conversations on the city's behalf because I am not the point of contact. I don't know who is now the point of contact. I advised Manuel and David to maybe talk with DEO about if they want to change who that point of contact is to be one of them. They should probably do that so they can have those conversations.
We've done that.
You've done that? Okay, great. I'm happy to still sit on any calls with this, but since it is a city agreement, I've had to step out. I've offered assistance to listen in, but not being an expert, we did what we could to make the city aware of a grant that was, a once in a blue moon opportunity. We don't know if that will be funded again. And to have almost $1 million for infrastructure with no matching component is huge. And the fact that there are some job requirements, but it's self-certified by the city, this program cannot be used for any one particular business. But it's very hard to actually get the grant and move forward with it with the pie in the sky idea. So some communities got this saying, okay, we're going to develop this industrial park and hope that we'll create 300 jobs. We have Nucor coming in, and you have Sunpier Holding that's in Avon Park in the northern part of the county that wants to hook up. They've been wanting to hook up for a year. So you have them coming in. I think you're going to commit to maybe 100, 150 jobs, but Nucor is committed to the state 250. You've got Sunpier there, and it's going to be 2 miles of infrastructure improvement up 27. That opens that 2.5 miles for residential, commercial, further industrial. Just in that area, again, not talking about Nucor specifically, you got an international plastics manufacturer that's decided to locate their first U.S. facility here in northern Avon Park. Once they can get equipped with the water and sewer, they can fully sprinkler their building and become operational and get to capacity that they would like to. That's going to create jobs. There's also about 100 acres of industrial land on rail that will be opened up with this water and wastewater infrastructure. We're about to go through a site readiness program. Only 3 communities in the state get selected to do that, and Highlands County got selected to do that on that property. So this is not going to be directed to one company. It's going to open up about 2 miles of great opportunity for expansion in Avon Park. So I went a little off kilter there,
No, we appreciate it.
but I haven't had a chance to speak with each of you individually, and I'm more than happy to come and do that with city staff and talk to you one-on-one about how that program works. But I will say that if you want to move forward with this grant, and I urge you to, because I don't know when you'll get another chance at $1 million with a no-match component and self-certifying, and an end user like a Sunpier Holding and a Nucor. And I can tell you, we're already getting interest in those other acres. That Cruiser's property up there, we're getting interest. Other landowners that own the land up there that were sitting on that land who have called and said, we want to do something with it, and they say no. Now that this stuff is moving and they hear about water and sewer, they're thinking about developing. And not just industrial. They're thinking residential opportunities. They're thinking a lot of really great things. And so I'd say the next step here, I'm happy to sit down with anybody. I'll bring appropriate city staff. We'd love to talk to you about it more. But I think really the back and forth now needs to be between council on DEO's side and the city side to make sure that you're comfortable with the agreement, that any expenses that were in the design and engineering could be counted.
It's interesting you say that, because when I asked you that several times, you said it was absolutely a done deal, that they're not going to change it. I actually called the state myself, and they told me no. I got it in writing. They are not going to pay retroactively. So the only thing we have is stuck with this bill that, by the way, staff, that individual did know in an email, and the state told them, you're not going to get paid for anything retroactively. But the spending kept on going. But what I'm getting at is, look, we're going to go forward. We're hashing this out in public because I want to be transparent. We are going to end up putting in these lines, which, by the way, if we had not gotten this grant, we could have done a CDBG for $750,000. We would have had to fork out $220,000 out of our own pocket. Hopefully the county would have kicked in, because all these lines are going on county property. It's in county unincorporated area, which hopefully at some point will be annexed into the city. But the Cruiser land, the Hill Grant, the land, all that land up there is in unincorporated Avon Park, and it's so far removed from being contiguous to the city of Avon Park, it'll take decades before they annex in. So The revenue to the city really isn't there. And let's face it, the Nucor jobs are not guaranteed to a single resident of the city of Avon Park. They're not. They're bringing jobs in. Well, is there a guarantee that we're going to hire residents of the city of Avon Park for this grant? The answer is no. We can't impose that on anybody. The grant is what it is. The marketing has been done, Polk County, Highlands County, everywhere else. But look, had we done a CDBG, it would have been the same thing. Actually, it would have been the county that would have had to apply for it because it's in county right away.
Yeah.
But I guess what I'm getting at is this.
May I speak a minute?
Sure,
Yes.
you can.
Jim Brooks. You know, Highlands County, IDA EDC, did not bring Nucor here.
I know that.
They came to Polk County. But if you look at where they are located, who's going to benefit the most? Sure, Polk County is going to get some ad valorem tax. They may, because they're a charter county, get a franchise fee, which Highlands County doesn't have franchise fees.
They won't get it for 5 years. They got a 5-year tax abatement.
Right. And that's Polk County doing that.
Mm-hmm.
250 jobs with an average salary of $65,000. Where do you think those people are going to live?
Anywhere, because if they're
An-
recruiting anywhere.
But the 4 people that are here getting Nucor out of the ground have already invested in Highlands County. Their kids are in school in Sebring. I'm not sure about the one that's in Avon Park, but there's a property that's been sold, I know, and a couple properties in River Greens that are Nucor people. And as she said, once this line is down 27, I believe you have a a annexation agreement if somebody receives water and sewer, do they not?
Mm-hmm.
So where is the Avon Park city limits out that way?
Well, listen, my motion was not to try to stop Nucor,
No.
because I'm not stupid enough to think I can.
No.
My motion is simply this. You're speaking about what it's going to do for Avon Park and that area out there. That area is only owned by about 4 or 5 people to start with. How many people are going to build homes in an industrial park? That's the first thing. Secondly, the water line.
That's not true,
Let
Stanley.
me finish. Secondly, we're putting in a sewer and a water line to the guard station, not to the plant. And do you think they bought all of that acreage out there, all that acreage not to build their own ponds and their own sewer in the very near future? I mean, why would they?
couldn't do that. DEP would not let them
Listen, with the kind of money they got, Jim, you're blowing smoke. I don't even want to hear it.
law does not allow that to happen.
With
But
that
they-
kind of money, they can do whatever they want to do.
Well, that's not true, Stanley. They actually needed this sewer line.
This is
In
going
order
to
to-
benefit about 4 or 5 or 6 growers out there. That's all it's going to do.
Well,
Well, I think
regardless
it's-
of who it affects, I just have one little backup. You know, we came in after the fact. Okay.
Nucor actually owns property in Highlands County also. It's not all in Polk County. That old grove in there behind the juice plant is Nucor's. There's already people talking to us that own property surrounding that area that are wanting to do residential. It's zoned residential on the River Green side. Megan went ahead and applied for this DEO grant so that the city would have it to pay for their water and sewer. And Governor Scott signed that before he left office. With the legislature right now, there may not be any more DEO grants, or at least not like this one.
Let me
And-
ask, did you know what came first? What really came first? The purchase of all that land and then the need for water and sewer? Or was it the need for water and sewer and then let's purchase this land?
I believe their original plans were to bring water and sewer down from Frostproof.
But they don't have the capacity and they're 9
I
miles
don't
away.
know. I have no idea, but I think it's easier for them to get it from Avon Park. And it's sure a lot more beneficial for Highlands County that it comes from Avon Park.
Right.
Well, of course. Of course. I
Yeah.
guess, Megan, I don't think that this was disclosed sufficiently last year. In 2018, when we had under different management, I think that someone really dropped the ball in really explaining what was going to happen here. 2 of us are new on this board. I don't know if Brenda communicated with them in the past or the other two council people that are no longer here. So, we have a lot of unknowns, and like I've spoken to at least one person down in the audience, this is moving forward. It cannot be stopped. I've been told time and time again, it's not going to stop. I just don't like the fact that Avon Park has been the last one to know in terms of what is really going on with this grant, really, because there hasn't been sufficient information as a board. It's all been, hit and miss, me conversations with you. I can't talk to them about it.
Whose fault is that, Maria? That's staff's fault for not informing us.
I agree. And if they were in front of me, I'd fire them.
Well, I go back to my motion. My motion was just simply, I didn't want to spend any more city money until we had a signed contract. That's all I'm asking for. I'm not wanting you to change or not get the grant or any of that. I just don't want to see us spend any more money until we get a signed contract, knowing we can get that money back.
But we have two contracts that have to be done. You have to have a contract with the DEO, and we need a contract with Nucor.
And you're also going to need an interlocal agreement with Polk County,
And
but it can be
and the
done.
whole
It's what's
utility
done
thing,
with the
but,
bombing range.
which one
And
comes first?
again, it's $1 million with no match required. If a little bit of city money needs to go in at the end of the day, is $1 million worth it, and is a guaranteed revenue source in Nucor and Sunpure Holding worth it. I am of the understanding that staff met with Nucor today and maybe got some possible revenue estimations on what that would be. And from my understanding, it's quite significant. And so I guess it's, like you were saying, you could have gone CDBG. The job creation requirements would have been more strict, and there would have been a matching component. So what's the difference?
It would have been a $220,000 match. That
Right.
would have been to total the entire cost of this thing. We already have, was it 40, 46? What was the amount that we've spent already?
We haven't spent anything.
It's been spent, but the work was done.
A conceptual drawing was done of the plan for the engineering. But we've not spent any money. Like I just told you, we've been given a bill against a purchase order that I've already denied. I denied that my first week here in January.
But
How are
we
you
owe
gonna pay the
somebody
bill?
some money.
We have discussed that with them.
Yep. Ultimately, the point here is that the project is a very good project, not only for Avon Park, but for all of Highlands County. This will bring not only a lot of jobs, it will bring other businesses to the area. Development breeds development, as it always does. Success breeds success, as it always does. There will be a lot of residential that comes with this. There will be a lot of commercial businesses, whether it be restaurants, hotels. I think isn't there a hotel that's already been looking at that area to service them?
Possibly. They've had conversations, and they're pretty vocal in that a hotel would be nice in that area. So I don't
Right.
know specifically, though.
Right. We do have a very large residential development that is pending from Ben Hill Griffin, not very far away from that. And we have a very large development from Cruz Groves. We have several large developments that are on the way to come in, and we've built significant infrastructure way outside of the city limits of Avon Park for those projects and for other future projects that are not even on the books. So why is it any different for this one? We've spent significant money to do that. This one is basically guaranteed to some degree, with a very high potential upside and a very low potential downside. If the city has to put in money to match or pay for engineering, I don't have a problem with that at all. We have a very large fund for that, and that's what that fund is there for. So I'm not seeing the downside. The only strike against Avon Park at this point is the fact that we may potentially have very high power lines going across Main Street. That's basically the only downside that I've seen from this entire project.
And I agree with you 100% with everything you said. I just feel, though, that the public has not been informed regarding the procedure of how the city is going to go about it. Today was the first time ever that I've seen a map with the locations of these poles. It's the first time that we've pretty much been told that there's not going to be a franchise utility tax going to the city. There are pitfalls in terms of the funding that we won't receive. Now, we'll be on, we get the grant, we're on the hook for those jobs. we still have to have a contract with Nucor
Right.
for those jobs, because if they fail to complete those jobs, then the city has to pay all that money back to the DEO.
Right.
I don't think that's gonna happen. I think that they're gonna fulfill the jobs and then some. So, I contacted the state and I asked them if there were any change orders, or if, because there's 250 jobs that they're bringing, the grant is only tabbed for 150. Could we capture maybe 2 more jobs out of that and get another $80,000 if we needed to for engineering? And they hadn't gotten back with me. They were going to check with their legal on that. But I think that in order for us to move forward, we really need to talk to Nucor before we even, they have to be simultaneous. DEO and Nucor have to be part of the same discussion,
I believe your staff talked to them today, Maria.
not the city attorney.
The city attorney's not here unless you have a meeting or you call him.
Yeah,
but-
and I know that, but so they finally
I
met
mean,
today.
That's kind of not procedure
Okay,
that you have
but
to.
put it this way, it's been since June of 2018, and we finally had a conversation with the city attorney. I'm sorry, with the city manager.
Yeah.
Jim, why I made my motion was simply this. David, I talked with you 2 weeks ago, and that bill was $20,000. Now it's $54,000.
No.
What?
No. What he did was he put a purchase order request in for $64,000 to cover some of these costs, some of these bills that we're going to be generating. It wasn't $54,000. He did a purchase order for $64,000, which I've turned down.
Okay, well, my question is, how much money have we spent?
None.
Actually?
None.
How much money are we on the hook to spend?
Up to 47, I think.
$47,000
Up to
right
that.
now.
Yep.
Do we have any further questions for Commissioner Brooks or Megan?
I don't.
Thank you, Megan.
Yeah.
Can I
Thank
make
you
one
very
last
much.
comment, just
Yes.
because I have all y'all here? So we will continue to work with staff, and we are open to any feedback as we move forward, because we are going to see a lot of development here, and we want this to be a good relationship as we're working through these projects. And so we'll work with y'all and staff on how we best want communication to move going forward, because our office is very transparent. There are times where certain projects are worked in confidentiality via state statute, but still, we will work with you as well as we can and how you would like that communication to go. I would like the chance to meet with each of the council members and, Mayor Anderson one-on-one, just to build relationships as we move forward. So I'll be reaching out to y'all to schedule those, and I can bring the appropriate staff, whoever you'd like to be there. But we like to be this for this to be an ongoing relationship, and I think there's just really exciting things going to be happening for Avon Park in the near future, and we're excited to work with y'all.
And I think that you've done a great job, explaining things, at least
I
to
do
me. And I just want you to know that my conversation tonight, is mostly out of personal frustration of how this has transpired. And that's pretty much it. I know that the train has left the station. There's nothing we can do at this point, but and the grant's gonna get done. It's all fine, but it's just me.
When you applied for the grant,
Yes.
David wasn't even here yet, right?
No.
You
I know that.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean,
That's why I say it's a personal
he's new to the
frustration that.
situation too,
Mhm.
but.
Yeah, a lot of our issue and frustration is not with you guys at all, so don't take it that way. I mean, this is our third city manager in what, a year and a half?
A year.
A year?
Yeah.
So, we've had a lot of growing pains and a lot of changes, so.
So, anything we can do to explain, or Megan can do, she can do it much better than I can, her and Taylor.
I agree.
Ben Dunn, we got Ben with us today, who's their boss, he's head of development services. We-
And he, by the way,
like I
has
said,
been.
we cannot take credit for
Yeah,
Nucor.
and thank you, Ben. You've been more than
We don't
helpful
wanna
as
take
well. I
credit
really
for it.
appreciate your help as well.
But
Yep.
we want to try to facilitate whatever we can do to help the city and help this thing move forward, so.
We thank you very much for everything you
Thank
guys
you for
have done.
coming.
Thank you.
So you had a conversation with Nucor today?
Yes,
Yeah, but-
well, I didn't. Ronnie Jones did, our
Do
engineer.
we have to change the agenda now
We also
because it's
have
not
a
on the
motion.
agenda?
In a second.
We're still discussing.
Okay.
Did you get some numbers or not?
Yes. We were under the impression that the water line was just going to go to their gate. That is not correct, according to what Eric Larimore said.
Right.
Can you speak a little louder, David?
I'm swallowing this microphone just
There you
about.
go. I hear you now.
The conversation went as we were under the impression before that our water was only going to go to their gate and our sewer was only going to go to their gate. That is correct in that that's at the county line. They're bringing the rest of it to our line. We can't go into Polk County and dig a line. So we're stopping there with that. He is 100% sure that based on his calculations of what their usage is going to be, they're going to be using 1 million gallons of water per month from the city of Avon Park. 1 million gallons a month as a conservative estimate. This plant is going to have 12 restrooms in it. They have what's called a washdown area that they will be utilizing well water for. There are wells out there. But for the potable water, that is coming from the city of Avon Park as well. Yes?
Who pays the impact fee on that? I mean, who receives the revenue of the impact fee on that? Would it be the city because
Oh,
they're
you.
using our utility, or Polk County get any of that?
No, you get the impact fee
Okay,
because
that was
it
my question.
impacts your particular treatment plants.
It's our treatment,
Mhm.
okay,
So that's going to be a huge impact fee.
okay.
Now,
But I
I-
wanted to point out something just briefly about utilities, you know, that's all,
Which one, the water, sewer, or electric?
well, water and sewer mostly.
Okay.
You know, a lot of it has to do with, it's sort of like, you know, having a taxi and having the right to go to the airport. You know, it's not so much in the money as that you're concerned about is in the cost of the taxi, but how many trips you can make to the airport and pick people up. The same with the utilities. When you get the utilities out there, that's where the money really is for paying for the cost of the utilities, and it'll also help you keep the rates down for the general ratepayers as well. When you have that much economy of scale that you're adding to the system.
Right.
Yeah, good point.
David, I have one question. I asked this question one time before, and this is the second time I've heard that they're going to be using $1 million gallons of water per month from the city of Avon Park. And I think you was here when I asked that. Could we handle that? That would be
Do we have the capacity
the
for it?
capacity to handle that?
From my understanding, we do, but I'm more
Okay.
concerned about the impact that it's going to have on our sewage system. And that's something that our engineer is looking into very much so. Has to be, because of the type of waste they're generating, there has to be some kind of filtering and monitoring on that on our end to make sure we're not getting like heavy metals and stuff like that into our sewage system. So that is something that Ronnie Jones is already looking into as to what we're going to have to install at the inlet.
I'm glad you brought that up because it's an issue I had with regard when they were talking about the industrial waste. As I recall, you don't have really an industrial wastewater ordinance, and I think that you really need one, because I did look at it a while back, and I don't recall who it was, probably Julian, that felt like really didn't need one. You need one, okay? And I think that a lot of the monitoring and so on doesn't need to happen at your end. It needs to happen on their end. They're probably going to be required by federal law to have pretreatment system before they send it to you. And there are ways, as I mentioned, that I worked with City of Lake Wales to establish their system. So be happy to talk to you about that, but I think we need to have that conversation.
Okay. Did you get numbers as far as what sort of revenues we would be getting from this?
I did, and I apologize, I did not bring that with me tonight. It's
Okay.
over on my desk.
You'll email it to us?
I will.
Good.
You're talking about the revenues in water and sewer?
Yes. You printed it out? Or you-
Well, it's on my phone. I can read it. At least we can get the info now.
All right,
Yep.
thank you.
Okay.
Is that gonna take
The
a minute?
revised one?
Yes.
Because the other one looked a lot better than the revised
It
one.
did, didn't it?
Hang on. Monthly water and sewer, about 12,323, plus additional water sewer fees indicated below, which would be, they were hard to read. They're just talking about gallons, but basically it's 12,323. That's with.
Dollars?
Uh-huh, that's
Per
water
month?
and sewer.
Per month?
Correct, per month. That's based off of, I'm presuming, we prorate it on the base fee is prorated depending on how many gallons you use. So it's based off of the $4.02 per gallon for over 12,000 gallons. That's $124 anyway. That's multiplied times the dates, the time, the 30 days rather than come up with 12,000.
Has Nucor been presented with what these fees will be and what the impact fees would be in connecting to our system? Do they know what they're going to be in for paying?
I am not sure that they've been given that exact number, but I will find out.
Wouldn't that be part of the agreement that we wind
Sure,
up having
should
with them?
be.
Absolutely.
Should be.
Doesn't that need to be worked out relatively quickly
Yes.
before we get?
We really need to start a conversation with Nucor with regard to their water and wastewater utility agreement.
And that comes before the DEO agreement.
Well, yeah, there's a lot of complexity to that with regard to the hazardous wastes and
Because they would have to
potential
be in agreement with it, and if they're not in agreement with it, we
Right.
don't want to do this grant.
Right, exactly.
So I'm assuming staff and the city attorney is going to be very busy in the near future.
Busier.
Which I would like to have one question posed. I did contact, like I said, the state to see whether or not administrative costs could be included in here, that if you added 2 more jobs to the list of 150, that would be an additional, I think it's $35,000 per job, so that would be $70,000. Even if they just gave us 1 more job and made it 151, that'll pay for his legal fees, our legal fees. So I was hoping that they would respond. They said that they would, but I didn't get anything today. But if they could do that, then we could authorize the city attorney to work on this. If the state doesn't pay for it, I would like for you to ask Mr. Nucor if they'll help pay our legal fees
Well,
on this contract.
If your ordinance doesn't provide for that already, then it needs to be changed to provide for it, because all the cities that I represent have a proviso that the legal fees and engineering fees associated with reviewing these things are all paid for by the developer, because if you pay for them, then either your citizens are paying for them or the water ratepayers are paying for them, and neither one of those two are right. It should be paid for the people that are impacting you.
And in Nucor's defense, I don't think they are aware of that. I think they just see the grant as a grant and the city's doing it and that's all there's to it. So there's got to be, that we're just going to apply for this grant and get the water and sewer there.
They're developing people should know it because they work all over the country, as I understand it, so.
Megan is back.
Can I make another comment? This grant is not for Nucor.
Well, it's
so
for the county.
It's,
Yeah.
right. And so, you can probably ask them and they might be amenable to it. But again, it's not my money, but I'm of the understanding that there might be a budget for this type of thing already, and if it can be done in-house and show good faith to that company, because again, if you're going to do that, then you got to go approach Sunpure, who was told that they could have an agreement before where they were going to finance the water and sewer when it was supposedly a shorter distance, and they were going to finance for 15 years with a lien on the property, and then they were told it wasn't doable. So this is not Nucor's grant.
Actually, it is, because all of the jobs hinge on them hiring 150 people.
No, there are going to be other
Well, it's
jobs
our
creating
grant,
in the
yes.
2 miles.
It's our grant, yes, we get that. But
I have a question.
the jobs are related specifically to Nucor's jobs.
No, they are not. They cannot be tied to any one specific business. It's great that Nucor is going to create 250 and that all those 150 could probably be encompassed in there, and it will be easy to verify because they have committed to those 235 jobs with the state in which they will do compliance. And then you can see
Right.
that it has been done. But no, it is not tied to all of their jobs. It'll be tied to some of the jobs that Sunpure Holding creates. And this is over 10 years. So over 10 years, there has to be at least 150 jobs. And so it might be low-hanging fruit that it might be all be Nucor because they need to have them in place by 2022. But it's still all the other ones along the 2 miles, whether it's a gas station, a hotel, apartments that have to hire a front desk person, any of those jobs would count. And so
I understand
there was
what
a
you're
moment where this was brought up to Nucor specifically at in a different meeting, and after the fact, they said, if you need us to pitch in some money because you got $1 million of infrastructure coming our way, we can maybe help do that. I think we would want to make sure that conversation is done in a way where we're not just saying, well, you have to pay for this because
Right.
we didn't know it wasn't covered in the grant. But if you have a way that it can be covered by the city and you're getting almost $1 million and you have it in a budget, that's my only comment on that, I guess.
Okay, my question was, do we have a grant now? Do we have a signed contract and a guaranteed grant?
No, you were approved by the governor that money would come to us and you could start the grant process.
It's in a bucket in Tallahassee right now.
That's what started this whole part of me to say that we were 50. When I talked with David, he told me we had spent $20,000 that we were not going to be able to recoup. It didn't look
Right.
like. So that's what started me. And now I heard a $54,000 figure, and now I hear a stop. And all I'm asking is not to change any of your plans or your ideas or any of that. I'm merely saying I don't want any more money spent on that from the city of Avon Park, that doesn't come through approval of this council. That's all I'm asking.
Well, yeah, and I understand that, Stanley. The grant needs to be signed by June 30th. There needs to be an agreement with the city by June 30th.
June
Or that
30th?
somebody else.
June
The state
30th?
fiscal, yes.
Yes, the end of the state fiscal year.
Okay.
So you've got till June the 30th to sign the grant. Otherwise, the money will go away.
Okay.
So that means we have to work quickly on that aspect of it.
Yeah, and that's been the deadline since day one,
Yeah.
which is how the program works.
If I can
Coming through
update-
the council with any money shouldn't slow that up.
It has
I
the
mean, we
potential
meet
to,
every,
yeah.
every 2 weeks. so-
Right,
You
and
can
it'll,
always have a
and
special meeting.
the agreement will need to
Or
come
have a
through y'all.
special
and-
meeting. I just think it needs to come through here.
Well, and
Just
the agreement has to come through you.
Right.
So,
Okay.
We've actually put it in place with our staff that everything is done by May 30th. So we're not waiting at the last minute. So all of our players, that's the deadline that we're using is May 30th.
it's
Okay.
a good idea because the state takes a while on their end too.
Yeah.
There's going to be back and forth, so thank you.
Okay. Thank you. So obviously, we've made it abundantly clear to staff to get this done, right? We're all in agreement to that?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
We, if I can just update the staff, we sent a document up at Tallahassee this week. It was our scope of work. It was a requirement they had placed on us. We gave them abundant detail, and they
I can't understand you. Can you talk in that mic, please?
We completed a scope of work document that the department in Tallahassee had requested of us. They wanted detail on what the construction activities were going to be and what the engineering work was going to be. We complied with that request. We gave them all the detail they needed. They revised the document, actually taking detail out that we had included. And they've told us it's acceptable to them so far. They're going to review it one final time, and sometime next month, they will present it back to the city for the council's approval.
Okay.
And I just want to reiterate something here. This is directly from Bridget Jackson, who's in charge of this grant in Tallahassee, or at least she's the liaison for this project, and she specifically says that the agreement between Avon Park and the DEO will have to certify that 150 new jobs were created as a result of this project. So yes, these 150 jobs we are on the hook for. So that's the contract that we have to have with Nucor to ensure that they do that. Otherwise, we have to pay the state back for as many jobs that aren't procured or hired by them. That's the percentage we pay back to the state. So I have no doubt they're going to hire the people that they're saying they're going to hire. I don't think, but we still need to put it in a contract. But the 150 new jobs are verifiable from the state. It may be other places will bring in more jobs and all that. That's great, but this grant is tied to 150 jobs.
That was an amount that they were unwilling to change. I had asked. They said they would not. They said that was an amount that was agreed upon with the previous administration, and they were unwilling to.
But we
go
haven't
back
signed a
on it.
contract yet with them.
Mhm.
We don't have a DEO final agreement.
I'm just letting you know, we did ask them to reduce that amount, and they said no. That was a number that had been agreed upon with Ms. Fisher.
That's what they
That's what
said at
Bridget
Tallahassee.
told me.
When did they say that?
When I spoke to them last week.
Okay, I spoke to them on Friday, and they said they were going to talk to legal because it was feasible.
Okay, that's not the information that was relayed to me.
Okay.
They said it was a done deal. They could not change the 150.
Yes, and the city absolutely has all of the funds needed to pay this amount in full if we so had to.
Right.
So it would not bankrupt the city in any way. The amount of development that could go out there, as Megan said, there's cities out there that are doing this with no businesses guaranteed to come in. We have businesses guaranteed to come in. It's a good project either
That's
way.
your take.
I think it's a great project.
too.
You know, I just don't
A-
like
as a-
coming in
a-
from behind, that's all.
As a businessman, I think we would be extremely foolish to not do this project. So, anything else on this subject?
So what was the motion again?
I done forgot.
To not to spend any more money.
I just didn't want any. I'm not. Listen, I'm not negative about Nucor or any of that. I just did not want to spend any more Avon Park money on the grant, not knowing we were guaranteed to get it back. That's my motion. If we're guaranteed to get it back, spend. If we're not guaranteed to get it back, I don't want. I want it to come through this council.
Right.
Any monies to come through the council.
But it would come through us anyway, whether it's guaranteed or not. It would come through us for us to approve it or disapprove it,
Ask him
correct?
about the $54,000, or the $20,000.
But he already turned it
It
down.
didn't
from
come
my
through the
understanding.
council.
Right. But the policy was broken either way.
Yeah.
It
But
don't
he-
matter, it
so
didn't come through
the-
the council.
But what I'm
This
saying is this
way-
motion is pointless if said employee decided to do the same thing.
Well,
It's not pointless.
It is pointless
He
because
thought
they
he could do
already broke
that.
the
He thought he
policy.
could do that.
They are,
But now,
that,
I'm not talking about David,
Right.
I'm talking about the employee.
the employee wouldn't have had
Never
the
mind.
authority to do it either way. Ever. Should have never happened.
Well, I can name some other things, but we won't get into that.
Right, but well, the point I'm trying to make is.
I understand
is
did
what
I
you're
that-
second
trying
your
to-
motion?
You did.
Okay, so we just go ahead and just call the motion and just be done with it.
We have a motion and a second.
Kill me.
Any other questions on it, comments? Seeing none, we'll call the roll.
Councilmember Gray,
No,
Councilmember Spurlock,
Yes.
Councilmember Sutherland,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Bernard,
Yes.
Mayor Anderson.
No.
Motion carries 3-2.
Thank you. Council member discussion.
That's-
Councilmember Maria Sutherland.
Please pull that one for right now.
Okay. Pulling item 9. Is there anyone not willing to do so?
to what?
Any objections to pull item 9?
No.
No objection.
Seeing no opposition, moving on to number 10.
Okay, on my updates for you. On the Brickell Building, after 17 days of labor, 863 man-hours, and 210 cubic yards of moldy drywall, it has been finished at the
Okay.
Brickell Building. I've personally inspected it. It looks a whole lot better. You can actually see the bones of the building right now. Where I'm at right now is we have ordered an indoor air quality kit, which will make 6 samples of air quality that we will send off to the lab to find out if there's any presence of presumed fungal growth at that point. Once we know that, then I can get the insurance adjuster here to actually inspect the building and inspect a couple of other properties at the same time. So we got the kit actually came in today. So Robert's going to be pulling the samples. They're going off to a lab. Then hopefully within a few weeks I'll know the results of whether we have presumed fungal growth inside the building.
Does it sound like if you do, that you'll be able to up the reimbursement from the insurance?
Yes, yes, I believe so. 'Cause especially with what we've already put into it. When I show him these figures of what we've
Yeah.
done and all that, yes. Church Service Center, the old firehouse, I have spoken with some members of the State Firemen's Association. They have a great interest in turning that into some type of fire department museum, not necessarily for the Avon Park fire history, but statewide fire history. There is only one fire museum that we know of right now. That's at the State Fire College in Ocala. And that's a room about half the size of this. They have one piece of old fire apparatus, hand-operated fire apparatus, and some display cases. These gentlemen said they could probably fill the thing up with memorabilia and old fire trucks and stuff like that, probably to the point that they would have to start rotating stock because they get donations all the time through the Firefighters Association. So it's a very good possibility. We do have $300,000 that was given toward that building. At this point, I think
300,000 for what, the insurance company?
insurance. So with that, I feel confident that we can tear out the complete part of that building and at least get a roof dried in on it to where then they can decide at that point where they want to go with it. If they do this, this would actually become a destination point for many, many people around the state that are interested in fire department memorabilia and firefighter memorabilia. So I'm excited at the possibility. We would probably need to encompass the skateboard park across the street as a parking lot for this facility if it gets to that point. I'm going to be continuing to work on this a little bit at a time, just to let you know, because I do think that we've got something better than the possibility of tearing it down right now. So unless I hear objections, I'm going to just kind of keep pursuing that right now without spending any money on it.
But is the eventual design to take all $300,000 and putting it into this building for this one group?
No, No, I don't, I think that I can demo the inside of that building and the roof in less than 300,000.
But the whole plan is to give it solely for their exclusive use.
The
Right.
city is going to own the building.
Right, and then we'll maintain it and we'll insure it and all that.
Just
and then
like we
someone
do
else
with
is
any
gonna-
other
What I'm
agreement.
getting at is we have the museum building as well that, I see Galen sitting there. I don't know, I don't mean to like drag you in. But we have the, historic museum building that needs some upkeep as well. I don't think that they got damaged during the hurricane or anything, but I'd like to see a plan that shows how we're going to make sure that, windows are fixed or any other elements from these other historic buildings get taken care of before we build it for one particular group. And if they are gonna come, I'd like to see a contract or something with them prior to
Oh, I don't
building it
disagree.
out.
Absolutely, we have
Yeah,
to do that.
But I
right-
mean, if you want the direction from the council to go that way, then we all need to be on board that this is what we wanna use it for.
Right now, I don't have any kind of a proposal for you. I've just got a conceptual idea that I gave to those fellas, and they jumped on it and said, this is a fantastic idea. Let's see what we can do. That's where we're at with it right now. I have no proposal to give you at this point.
Okay.
Was there any possibility of funds coming from them?
Funds from them?
In other words, are they actually going to be able to fund this project?
They'll pay for water
in
and-
perpetuity and take care of the building and.
That's an agreement we would have to enter into with
Right,
them.
but did they indicate whether or not they would have funds to do something like that?
Yes, they did.
Okay.
And they'd pay their own utilities and all that?
Yes.
My question, David, have you thought about what plans, for the church services that's there now?
Actually, I have that as item number 6 that I was going to speak to you on, but I'll go ahead
Oh.
and do that one right now.
Well, I didn't know that's what that was.
Yes.
Sorry.
Yana Concrete is going to be moving out of their downtown office. Are they still here? Nope,
No,
they left.
They left.
They have built a new facility on the truck route, still inside the city limits. The building that they are in downtown, not too far from the old fire station, is going to be given back to the city. That is a city building. They're giving that back to us. My plan for the immediate future would be to move the church service center to that building, to the Yana office, to let them operate out of that. I have spoken to Mr. Jeffo about that possibility. He was very interested. Conliana told me tonight that it looks like they're going to be completely out of that building in the next 3 weeks. They have a lot of files and file cabinets right now they're trying to figure out what to do with. So it looks like we can be moving forward with moving them to that, and then they won't have to be working out of a shed like as they are now.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
And again, that is probably a temporary
Yeah.
solution, certainly not a permanent one, because they have some other plans developing in the future for them as well. So that's looking good, and I think we can make something work really good for them.
And on that building in and of itself, if you move them in there, who pays the utilities on that?
Did they pay the utilities at the old firehouse?
I don't know.
I think they did. No.
I know they paid the water bill,
Yeah.
water and sewer. I know they paid that, but I'm not sure about power.
Electric and all that.
I'm not for sure.
They
about
did.
that
They did do that because
Yeah,
they were.
I'm not sure. I just don't want to keep giving buildings away.
Well, I agree, but
I mean, would we ever consider that being an industrial area anyway? Has there
It's-
been any
it's
consideration
zoned
of anyone
industrial.
wanting to use it for industrial use?
they're not beating down the door right now.
Are they aware that it exists?
I don't know
I
that.
think everyone thinks it's Yana Concrete, as it has been for the past, 50 years?
At least,
Yeah.
at least 50.
Yeah.
Well, should we look at that before we do anything, or do we just automatically want to do this for the, I mean, if you're saying that the church service center is going to be there possibly temporarily, should we be working on some action plan to try to see if we can do something industrial-wise with that property? I mean, we didn't get much tax out of it in the past, so it's not like we're going to be missing much there, but
Yeah. No, I mean.
it does have decent infrastructure.
The best thing for, it's a great industrial site, and we don't have a huge amount of industrial property in Avon Park.
Right.
It's already set up with an office, with a yard, lots of things could be done. The best thing for Avon Park would be if there is a business there that's creating jobs and creating, taxes and things of that sort. So, from a temporary aspect,
Yeah, but temporary ends up being permanent in Avon Park.
well, it depends on how the agreement is.
Well, we had an agreement with the Boys and Girls Club, and we still have
One thing we failed to
portables.
do of our buildings is market them
Right.
efficiently.
Yep.
We have several buildings that's going to be getting marketed. We have the Brickell building coming up.
Mhm.
that building. I mean, need to look at a good way of marketing these buildings.
Galen Thomas, 703 West Winifred Street.
Yes,
I
ma'am.
just want to weigh in on that in light of the CRA plan and when Yana Concrete was to be removed, we want to change that from being heavy industrial like that to being something pretty, something welcoming. That's one of our gateways into the city. And so you want to try to make that attractive. So I just want to throw that in there when y'all start thinking about more businesses, which I agree, it would be great if we could sell the property and get taxes, because that's what CRA makes us happy. But, just don't try to get more industrial back in there.
Industrial can be pretty, Galen.
Yes, and that's what we have to guarantee, that is pretty. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Okay. On the recycling containers, we have already picked up 1,800 of them. They're picking up about 100 to 120 daily. That's a daily process that they're going through. We are getting some concerns that some of them have been on the curbside for a couple of weeks. We're trying to address them as quickly as we can. Unfortunately, a lot of people just haven't gotten the word that they're supposed to put them out there. But we're trying to get that word out there, let them know, your neighbors, talk to your neighbors and let them know, put it out by the road, and we'll try to get it picked up. That's where we are with that. A reminder that we're doing ethics training Saturday morning, May 4th. Don't forget that. 18 East Pine Street, that is still a possibility of being donated. I have done an asbestos study on that, as was directed to someone before I ever got here, and it never got done, but that was done 2, maybe 3 weeks ago. I'm waiting on the results of that before I go back to Mr. Brokaw and say the survey's clean, yes, we'll accept it if the council wants to. So as soon as I get a further update on that, I will come back to you for direction on which way you want to go with that property. And also, at the last meeting, this is not on the notes here. This came up as a afterthought. There was discussion concerning RPAC and the funding for the Lake Tulane lakefront park. That is city property. So we can
Knew
Mm-hmm.
it
go
all the
back.
time.
We can go back. We found the deed. We can go back to RPAC now and tell them there is no concern about being a housing authority. It is ours.
Where'd you find that info?
Property appraiser's office.
They keep good records.
Well, and we had a deed here we also found that was
Yeah,
done
okay.
3 or 4 years ago. But anyway, that's all good. That's all I had.
Let me just ask one question. Since you brought that up, so now the funds will not be distracted from,
Tulane.
Gotcha.
That is
Tulane.
correct.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Can I ask you something, David? What was going to be purchased with that? Was it like a little swing set or something?
It's
or-
playground equipment.
So, do you know what age group playground equipment?
Do you?
It was for children. It was fairly young.
Because because of the size and the height and all, is it for like between 2 and 7, or was it between 7 and 15? Because
It-
there's two totally
I
different
would
kinds
go
of.
the lower end. It was decidedly for children who were small.
So, but that decision was made by administration way back when.
It
I
was-
would like to get input from the South Side and see what they want.
Decision
because if
on
the money's
on
there.
on the equipment was made in 2017.
But it was never made with any input from the South Side
I'm s-
residents, is what I'm getting at.
Okay.
So I would like to revert that and ask the South Side residents if they want it for little kids or
Sure.
big kids, or if there's enough money to buy for two separate. Because I know that dinosaur out there cost $18,000. So if you're gonna buy, so if you're gonna buy a swing set, it's gonna cost you $12,000 to $15,000 to $30,000. So do you want to get one for big kids and one for little kids, or just one of each, or just one? That's their community is who uses it, so they should have a say in what they want to see there. Is just what I'm saying.
How are you going to ask them?
Stop.
Huh?
Do you have a comment?
No.
Well,
Do you
I
know
mean,
how what will be an effective way? I mean, what is it? Are you going to go to a CRA meeting? Are you going to walk the streets? How are we going to ask?
well, maybe they can call. Maybe the newspaper or the radio can. We can't use our website anymore. Put it on Facebook.
You're
See
just
what
going to
people
give a time
respond.
frame and say, hey,
Well, why don't we give it until the end of the month? That's just around the corner. We can't do that.
Better go
Yeah.
next month.
I just think that you want it to be used for those that will use it the most, otherwise it won't. And it's a wasted piece of equipment, so. That's just me.
Okay.
I have one question on item number 1, the Brickell building.
Yes.
That if everything passes, then I know at one time we talked about selling the building, which I'm still in favor of, but there was also some type of code violations that were on the second floor that didn't meet something to be able to pass, whether it was fire or something like that. Has that been looked into?
There's probably a litany of codes that it's currently not.
That we'd have
Passing.
to update before we could sell
No.
it? We
No.
can sell it as is and
Sure.
have them updated?
Right.
Okay. That's all
That'd be
I
the
need.
best way, I think.
That's
Yeah.
that-
You want to leave it as broad as possible because
Okay.
you don't know what they're going to be doing.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
That's great news, thank you.
Okay, and the next item that I had is a follow-up on the Avon Park Chamber of Commerce. You had asked me at the last meeting to provide you a documentation as to what we have actually given to the Chamber of Commerce. Ricky went back to 1988, and you can see that 3-page spreadsheet there in your packet, which shows exactly what funds were either from CRA or from general fund. For the past several years, the majority of any funds that we have given to the Chamber of Commerce have been through the CRA. There's been a few little small exceptions in there from general fund, but mostly, I think going back 10 or 12 years, it's been from the CRA. And George is here tonight if y'all had any questions of him, but this is primarily for you. You asked for this at the last
Yep.
meeting, and there is your report of what's been spent since
Okay.
'88.
I remember in 2017 where I think it was 3 or 4 months into the year before it was even talked about authorizing the 8 and 7,000 to 15,000, and I think that it was expected early, but we agreed to pay it out at a later date in order to get to the chamber. And I think that do we have money budgeted for that right now, David? I think we
There's
do.
$14,000 that is budgeted. There was none spent last year in '18. Well, wait a minute. Don't let me say that for sure.
Okay.
Y'all,
Budget in the CRA or general?
$37.50 was spent.
it's budget. It's a line item in the budget,
Of CRA or general fund?
General fund, right?
general fund.
Got it.
Well,
And some of these things, by the way, are kind of misleading because if they had, I don't mean in misleading in a negative way, the German band for Oktoberfest, you can't count that as, that was an event.
yes.
You know, it's a one-time thing event, so that's not money contributed to the chamber, it was money for paying a band.
Yep.
So, I mean, there are expenses in here that are kind of, you have to carve those out versus what actually went to the chamber.
But
Right.
we gave you a complete listing
I know.
of everything that had been.
I know, I'm just telling them
Funded
that,
for
you
that.
have to read the purpose.
So in 2018, yes, there was $37.50 taken out of the $14,000 that was budgeted. It was given to the chamber through CRA. So, and this year, you have that same $14,000 in there, and nothing's been tapped into yet.
So it was paid out of the CRA
Right.
Main Street, but yet you just said it was budgeted
Yeah.
for this year out of our general fund. Did you misspeak or is that,
I think I misspoke.
okay. So it's
Okay.
budgeted out of the CRA.
Yes,
Okay.
I apologize.
Got it.
All right.
Now, I believe the issue lied with there was stipulations on what the CRA could give money for. I believe that was
Thank you.
the big issue, was that it would need to come from general fund if we wanted to not have a litany of strings attached to it. So, you know, if the city wants to give the chamber money, it should come from the general fund if we're not wanting to limit it to things that support brick and mortar stores.
Okay. Well, and that being said, I think that the last meeting, it was presented to us like $20,000 for the chamber as well as another 15 for a clerk. I think that I'd be willing to make a motion that we go ahead and give George at least 15,000 for this year and maybe look at next budget to see if we want to go ahead and get a clerk for the chamber or not.
Well, there was only 14 budgeted now.
Okay, then I'll go with 14, but that was CRA. We were talking about taking money out of general fund.
General fund, yeah.
So I'd be willing to take
Well,
14,000.
before we get too far, do we have any extra money in the general fund of the city of Avon Park to give for something like that?
Probably,
Probably.
probably.
Yeah.
Ricky has done an outstanding job at identifying some sources of funding in the general fund that we weren't aware of. He has uncovered a lot of little nooks and crannies there.
Yeah. Well, that would be my question, is finding out what we have in the general fund and what makes sense from the general fund's perspective before we, I mean, you make whatever motion you want, but I'm just saying that would be my opinion of trying to find out what we have before we.
And while you're on that subject, though, I mean, I just want you to know that just as much as you're an advocate for the chamber, as am I, I'm also a strong advocate for the museum. And they have people that sit in there day in, day out and receive residents or tourists, and they put on events and things on their own.
Right.
Why aren't we contributing to them?
And my thought on that
We are
is that-
contributing
Excuse
to
me.
the, before we get off the museum subject, we are contributing to the museum in,
No, not the Peter Powell Roberts. I'm talking about the train,
Right.
the depot.
I'm talking about the train as well. Haven't we made building upgrades to that building, and do we not pay their utility fees and everything?
I don't know that we pay their utilities.
Not
We
sure.
don't? We don't?
I don't think we do.
Okay. All right. I
No,
could be
I'm
wrong.
not sure though.
They also pay for all the lights that go down Museum Avenue
Right.
that are on city sidewalks.
That's something we need to look at.
Right, so I mean, if we're gonna be giving, you know, they both kind of do the same thing in a sense. They market the downtown, they market Avon Park. One group is the, what is it, the archive of all things historic for Avon Park. If not for them, we don't have that. So, I'm just saying, if we're gonna give to one, I think that the other one is just as important.
Yeah.
And my
That's just-
thought on that is that as far as the chamber is concerned, I support the chamber 100%, but I think the chamber should also not only just market downtown Avon Park. What about the south side of Avon Park or other areas in Avon Park as well?
And that's why it has to be out of the general fund.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying.
And
I
if-
don't have a problem with
yeah.
that now. Don't get me
Well,
wrong.
And I would like to say, if special projects come up, that they only want to do something for Main Street or only want to do something for South Side, then you can tap into those funds for those specific things, and that would be in addition to the current city fund. But it has to be something that's, you know, per the plan.
Yeah, I think the waters got a little bit muddy in that conversation that we had, because we were kind of talking about several different things at once. Basically, you know, one of the big discussions that we have coming up is, what are we going to do with the CRAs? Are we going to combine them? Are we not? And what kind of staffing level are they going to have? And we were sort of talking about, you know, the chamber performing some of those duties and things like that. So,
But the chamber can't if you don't, because they're global. They're global. They're not district-oriented.
exactly. I would just simply say that I'm agreeing with you that we need to separate them completely. And you have an amount that comes out of general fund for the chamber, or a museum, or whatever, or all of it. And then we have the other conversation with the CRAs and go ahead and do whatever it is we're going to do with them.
So I'd like to ask David at the next meeting, can you see whether or not the museum is self-sufficient, or are we subsidizing any of their utilities?
Yep.
And we can base whatever we decide for them, if we want to, we can base it off of that.
Okay.
I'd like to make one comment about, you're talking about the chamber and Main Street. I know that the chamber, being George, puts out regular emails about every event that goes on in Avon Park as well as other locations. And actually, somebody on my Facebook page wanted to know about something that had gone on in the past, and they weren't aware of it, and they want to know how they would learn what's going on within Avon Park, whether it's on a city website, which I know we haven't completed any change to do that, but I think that one thing we could do is tell people, if you would call the chamber and get on their email list, that I think the chamber does a great job of advertising everything in the city of Avon Park, no matter where it's at.
Yeah.
But George, don't you have to be a member to get on your listserv?
No, you don't. I mean, we're a membership organization. That's
Yeah. If
you sat in my seat, you know.
George, if you want to make comments, come up.
Our focus, George Kiros, Avon Park 28 Main Street, Avon Park Chamber of Commerce. We're a membership organization, and we have 200 members. We actually cater towards them, but we're also catering to the city. And
Little
everyone
loud,
comes
George.
in.
You got to get in front of
Everyone
the
who comes
mic.
in the city for a map or a general question, it's not even exclusive just to Avon Park. It could be trolley fairs, in Ybor City, but we'll do that because we help the city. That's what we do. It doesn't just stipulate just our membership. We survive with our membership and whatever we can get from the city. I look back at that list too from the general fund, a lot of money, $113,000 over the last 1989. A lot of it is general fund. Last couple of years.
Plus a free building.
Pardon me?
Plus a free building. Let's
Right.
not forget that. You now own a building that used to belong to the city.
Yeah, that's another conversation,
Mhm.
and we appreciate it. I mean, at this
Mhm.
point, it's
I
just
know,
me,
I'm
the
just throwing
only
it in there.
employee, so I'm trying to grow the organization so we can help the city, so it's a win-win.
All right.
And whatever happened before, as you've pointed out, the previous city manager and the previous city attorney, there's a lot of woulda, coulda, shoulda, but going forward in a healthy way, I hope that you can, from the general fund and from what he's presented to you, help us out, and if it doesn't have to be taking away from the depot, although the depot's not here, if the depot wants that money, they should come here and talk to you about it.
They had no idea this was on the
Either
agenda
way,
because we can't
I don't
advertise it.
necessarily, seeking a dollar amount that would wipe out the general fund. I just want a portion that I think would continue to take us on the right track to help the city and also the people of this community. So we can have a speaker series, so we can have a really good Christmas parade, that we can have another springtime. I mean, funding and lack of money, and as far as reaching out to the south side, I'm all for that. There isn't a whole lot of businesses that I'm aware of that have been chamber members. I'm open to that. I'd like to meet with them. If there's events happening, Martin Luther King parade, I know that happened, we promoted in my tenure here. That's all on the table. But it's just hard from a resource perspective to do anything after you pay the IRS and pay the bills,
Yeah, and by the way, if the museum were up here and the chamber were not, I would have made the same pitch for the chamber.
Very well, but in putting into context chronologically, I reached out to June with a proposal, and I've been coming here on a very regular basis for quite some time, and I wish the best of the depot. I just went up there and met with them, and Elaine gave her a magazine, New Visitation Guide, that we produced, non-city dollars, and we're giving away to everyone, and they're very happy, and they're friends, and I recommend they do the same thing we're doing.
May I ask you a question?
Sure.
Have you reached out to any of the businesses on the south side?
Can you be a little bit more specific?
Just like you said you went to someone else and presented them with a flyer or something like that? I'm just curious.
Yeah, that's not typically how we go seek members, but I have spent time
Well,
all over the
however
city.
you seek members.
Yeah, off the top of my head, not one specific business, no, ma'am.
Okay.
Okay. Do we have any other questions
Although
for?
I did hand out flyers at White Park, and I've
Everyone
done things just as my normal rounds for events like Christmas parade, trying to get people involved, the pageant. I've been all over the city, so it's not just to me a South Side thing. I'm one person, but I've been all over the city, and I don't think really it's really is regionally, as a membership business organization. That's our focus, and we certainly have open, as you know, luncheons every month, like we're having Thursday, to everybody. So Southside businesses are more than welcome to come meet people from the city, just from the county, from the city, from the police, pardon me, not the police, but the government, as a way of meeting these people and getting involved. And I'm all for Southside. I've reached out to a lot of people.
So Avon Park is Avon Park, correct?
Yeah.
It's just Avon Park, period.
Yes, sir.
That's right.
Yes, sir, but if people from Sebring want to join,
I know a member you can go hit up,
okay,
Nucor.
they are now members.
Good.
Yeah, they reached out to us.
Okay, just, all
And
right.
they've been all
great.
over having a number of fairs for jobs. I've also promoted the almost $1 million that was allocated for infrastructure, which is be more tools in the toolbox as far as I'm concerned, to bringing in families and businesses and helping out with schools. That's been promoted for a long time. So coming to this meeting, I'm glad you got a kumbaya moment and met and talked things out. But, I mean, I've always been helping anyone who needed help.
Okay. Thank you, George. So, you have direction to get some numbers from the museum.
Yep.
Is there any other questions or comments on this topic?
I just want to ask, when you put together your list of things, I know that sometimes I've asked for things to be on there and stuff. I mean, is it predominantly requests from council for that, or is this your list that you have?
On my updates?
Yeah.
It's predominantly things that I have that you have asked me as a council or
Yeah.
individually for updates on. I try to keep y'all informed as to what's going on.
And I know you do, and sometimes we'll go through a meeting and I won't think of something until, later on that evening, and then it's like, oh gosh, we could have discussed that. But could we have just an active list? There's things that are not on here that you don't need to discuss, but yet we're waiting for other information for, I can't think of anything off the top of my head, but, an active project list. We've got a budget and we're spending money on XYZ, what are we doing outside of these chambers? I heard you say that we've only picked up so many recycle cans and stuff.
1,800.
So, that could remain on here until the last one's picked up. But I'm just saying, an active list, we don't have to hit them every single time we have a meeting, but we can at least go through that big lengthy list. One of them being the FBO and where we stand with advertising that, those things that it'll at least give you, an active
I actually
working-
discussed that one at the last meeting, but I don't have anything
Yeah,
new
but that
on
could
it.
remain on a list, and we
Mhm.
may not even discuss it because there may not be anything new, but at least it remains on it because, like I said, I can't
Sure.
remember every little thing that we discussed when we first ran.
Right.
Each one of us had 15 things. And we talked about them, but not everything has moved forward with all of that.
Okay.
And
I'll just do a pending projects thing, and then if we have something to discuss, we can discuss it.
Yeah.
Any updates on it at that
That's
point?
easy. Yeah, that's great.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Anything else?
Actually, sorry, I just want to find out where we are here. I mean, after talking last week, and I'm just kind of curious, you're going to go back and maybe consider giving the chamber some money from the general fund based on the many years that it's happened?
What's budgeted?
It'll be discussed again, April 8th is our
April 8th?
next meeting.
Yeah.
And I'm going to give some more information that they asked for, like what the museum is doing and such as
Okay.
that. And then they'll make an informed decision at that point.
The
April
question is what money is available in the general fund.
Sure.
That's what he's trying
So
to find
April
out.
8th is, but just to my board, people want to know that aren't here. April 8th is probably the next time we'll take this issue up. Is
Yes.
possible funding for the chamber?
Hopefully formally.
Hopefully formally. Okay. Because there's a lot of wonderful things that get addressed here through the times I've attended, and sometimes things move a lot faster than others. Ms. Gray brings up a lot of really good points about Southside. Got me thinking about ideas that we can incorporate. So this is important to me, but also realize that it really helps us help you. If we can hire a part-time person to answer a phone, I can get out, go to Southside and sell the city. These types of things, just bare bones reality.
Right.
And it doesn't take much.
One of
Really?
the disadvantages is that the chamber used to have those volunteers that used to come in from Florida Hospital,
Mhm.
and they were full-time volunteers.
Yeah.
There were several people that came in and filled in all the gaps of hours and stuff, and
Yes.
that was extremely
I
helpful.
think going to my third year and knowing that many, I guess, just looking at the data from the last number of years where money was either general fund or CRA money given to the city, you had David Greenslade, people that stuck around and you invested in your chamber leadership. But there's many months in between various executive directors leaving that I think, in other words, realistically, you can't invest in something that seems to be in turmoil. But I think I've shown you in goodwill, good faith, and effort. I know this gentleman, attorney, welcome back. When I started, you were gone, and now you're back. And there's been so much I've endured and not had as receptive audience. So I'm glad you're back. And I'm glad this is happening. But it's just really difficult to put a good faith effort through and not have it reciprocated. And that's my only frustration, I guess, right now, is that you may not want or share the same vision I do, or people on my board, or just people I talk to, because I answer a lot of questions. Like, I have to answer questions and direct them to sewage or when cycling comes. There's so much I do as a non-city employee that I don't get paid for. That's fine. I think that's wonderful. But I think we can make the ship move a lot smoother from actually you guys listening to us. I appreciate that. But that has been kind of absent for a long time. And my third year, like last year and a half, except the times that I've come to the city council, but getting emails returned, thank you, Mr. Flowers, having phone calls, Mr. Bernard knows, just getting an email returned by previous administrators was difficult, or having a proposal looked at, is very difficult. So I appreciate this, and I don't want to come across
Ungrateful.
not thankful, ungrateful, because I am. I just am also realize time is of essence for us to move forward, and get some things taken care of. So anything you can do, like I said last time, be greatly appreciated. Anything I can do at your direction, certainly open to that as well. I really want to, we're all on the same boat, and I really am wanting to make this work for everybody, the entire city, all quadrants of the city.
We know you do a wonderful job.
I do the best I can, and I can do better if with your help.
Yep. We appreciate it. Thank you, George.
So can we start just a little list that we would like to have on the agenda? I happen to keep my handy dandy insurance payments in this little file folder. And I'd like to see where we are with any of these things. I mean, we got the hangars, did they, a lot of money was paid to them, and I don't know if all of them were already fixed. Can I start scratching stuff off this list? In here also is the street lights, FBO building, council chambers, public works. Some of these have already been addressed. And there was another one, which was the classic Caladium, that wasn't on this list. Anyway, and I didn't know if.
That's one that I'm looking at with the insurance adjuster.
Okay, so
when
I'm
he
going to
comes.
add that to this, but this insurance list is something that I'd like to see, because I don't want that money going where it doesn't need to go. I mean, the pool hanger was removed, and I don't think it needs to be replaced, because I know that there's a runway that's going to be going through there, so that money right there is going to be extra money. I'd like for it to stay at the airport, because
sure.
they may have some infrastructure needs or a grant match or something like that. So it's just that, making sure that that money is accounted for in the future and we don't use it elsewhere. But anyway, if you could include the insurance list.
Okay.
That's just one thing. I don't know if any of you guys
I'm
have
sure
something
if
else.
you put everything in an email and send it to David, he will add it to the list, won't you, David?
I'll
Yes,
make sure I
sir.
put a colon at the end of it.
All right. That concludes our regularly scheduled agenda.
Nope.
No, no.
Okay.
Nope.
Nope.
Got one public person that would like to speak, Mr. Alfonso Williams.
And I'd like to speak before we close, too.
Yep. I was just going to open it up for the end.
Yeah.
Mr. Alfonso. And for future reference, just hand me up those forms whenever you get them. That way I know.
My name is Alfonso Williams, and I reside at 208 Green Street here in Avon Park for 59 years. My issue here tonight is concerning the tampering with the water meters. My son came to me and told me he had an issue that his water was cut off. And he told me this yesterday. And so I went up to the city hall, spoke to whoever the supervisor is to try to resolve the issue. They got into a long discussion about things that didn't have to do with the main issue. Like one thing didn't have to do with the other thing. So my son told me he didn't tamper with the meter. But when I talked with the city manager, he called me about around 5 something this evening. He said, who benefited from that tampering with that meter? Because I understand the city incurred a fine of $100 for any people tampering with the meter. But I've been up there to the city hall paying my water bill, and I've heard certain residents ask for the permission. It's like, well, we're going to be working. We might want to turn it on this hour. They city can't send people out every time they want to turn it on and off. They've given them permission, but that has nothing to do with my son's issue. But I'm just saying that they have given permission for certain people who may be building constructors or whatever on property, fixing it up, because I've heard it with my own ears, and I know people. But that's kind of irrelevant in a way. But when I pay that fine, if it's imposed and it goes through, who's going to benefit from that? Then I was told that no money was paid on that account. It's at 39 Metcalf Street in Avon Park since October. Now, I've never known the city to let someone go, what is that, October, November, December, January, February, and this is March, if you ain't paid nothing. Now, I was told that there was 2 breaks. one in February and one just recently. Now, I don't know how long the water had been off or whatever, I don't know. But if I had known, it would have been on the next day. That's my son, I love him. I don't behold him, but I support him any kind of way I can. I don't care how old he is, which he's 26 years old. So I went up there today to pay the back bill, the future bill that's coming out, since there wasn't a final bill, was not ordered. So he's ahead, left him with a little credit. But when my son or any of my children come to me, I'm going to help them any kind of way I can. I try to keep them to stay out of trouble. If they ever get stopped by the police, hey, don't say nothing. Just call me, because a dead man can't talk. And I've been before the judge before. Judge will tell you, he can't put you in jail because you don't want to talk. But I know one of the first things they do is say they reach your rights. You have the right to remain silent. So if I'm not arrested, do I not still have that same right? I just want to throw that in there. So like I said, when they came back out to fix the break, this was the second time, I told the city manager, Mr. Flowers, that perhaps they left it on. I don't know, but still, he said, who benefited from it? Well, the best I can answer that is, if the city turned the water off, my son is not entitled to that water, those 3,000 gallons he used. But you know, I paid for it today. I paid for those 3 gallons that he used. But he said he didn't turn the meter off. A lot of time when your friends, people want to barbecue out there, somebody might take it upon themselves to turn it on, or the city may have left it on when they came out to do some work, you know, to fix the pipe, because it had burst in the yard, flooded out the yard, which they need to go back and fill it in with some dirt. But I'm just saying, I'm not trying to get out of something. I'm not trying to look for something for nothing. Because when I went there today, I paid $300. I could have easily paid $400 for the other $100 that the city was asking. But my son told me that I didn't tamper with it. I have no other choice but to believe him.
I have a question for the lawyer. What liability does a property owner have if someone tampers on a line is it in the city right away, or is it on the city is it on your property, or is it in the city right away? The water,
meter?
Yeah.
The meter's on the city.
It's on the right of way.
Okay, but if
Right
someone
away.
messes with something that's on,
There's a theft statute, I can't remember now, it's 816, I believe it is. And it basically stands for the proposition, it actually says specifically that there's a rebuttable presumption that if somebody's benefiting from the water being turned on, that they turned it on. So, I mean, this is I have no reason to doubt him, but it's the same thing that utilities have been hearing for forever. I didn't turn myself back on. I know you turned it off because I didn't pay my bill, but I didn't turn it back on. Somebody else must have turned it on. Well, who got the water? Who benefited from it? You did. So why would we assume that Fred Smith down the street would turn on your water to give you benefit? That's why the statute states that there's a rebuttable presumption. If the water's turned on, the person benefiting from that is responsible. And the fine under the statute's $1,000. It's not $100.
but the city imposes 100, and if it's after hours, I think it's more money.
I'm not sure.
Yeah,
That's
I
for
mean,
reconnection.
you have between the working hours, it's a certain amount, and then anything after 5 PM, we charge more to connect and disconnect. Because you have to
$80.
send the staff out there to do it when they're on overtime.
$80.
As I recall, it's
Yeah,
also
80,
it's also
you're
a
right.
it's also a misdemeanor under the statute. So it's it's this as a city, and I think, as I recall, I put that in there. It's a smaller fine because we don't want to go to court and we don't want to get somebody gummed up. But if it's just a one-time thing, then that's what they charge. But obviously, if it happens again, that's something they'll have to consider.
So let me ask you, since the city imposed a rule, and let's just say, what if he called the police and said, I didn't do this, I don't want to be charged for this? If there was a police report on it, where does that fall into the mix?
It doesn't fall anywhere.
Nowhere?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a civil charge.
Would the city go out and cut it off then? That we wouldn't know who cut it on, but it'd still be his liability for the gallons that was used.
That's what he's saying according
Yeah.
to the statute.
Yeah.
Right. And like I said, the fine is actually a soft fine compared to the statutory fine of $1,000.
So let me ask you, Mr.
And we
Williams,
actually
how is it
offered
that
to
he lived there for
finance
5
that.
months? Did he never receive a bill? You said that there were no bills.
No. He been living there for several years. It's just that we were told, I think she's the supervisor at the city hall, that he hadn't paid. I'm trying to see. I want to say it verbatim. You haven't paid any money on your water bill since October. I
And he
think.
hadn't been cut off since October.
But you see, but the water was on, is what I'm saying.
Right.
So I couldn't understand that either. And there's other issues that they said dealing with the billing part, which to me is no problem. If the consumption was used, then we gonna pay the bill, is what I'm saying. But if he say he didn't tamper with it, because you saying if the city came out in February and then they back out again in March for the same problem because a pipe burst under, I'd say, well, maybe they left it on.
Well, wait a minute, now,
No.
you're bursting on your property, why would the city be repairing that at all?
didn't.
I can't imagine that.
It didn't.
Well, they
No.
said that it was on the
Well, you don't, we don't.
right away.
No utility repairs pipes on the other side, the downstream side of the meter. It doesn't happen because it's not our pipe.
They
So why
told-
would we repair your pipe?
Well, you got pipe from the meter, but we were told, even Mr. Flowers told me today, that he would not be billed anything for the pipe, correct? Because it was
Okay, if
on
the
city
pipe-
property.
If the pipe break happened after the meter, between the meter and your house, that's your responsibility. But the pipe break you're talking about did not happen that way. The pipe break happened in the city's water line before the meter.
And there's
We
no-
would have had no reason to turn your water back on because we weren't messing with your pipe. The pipe break did not cost you one dime.
Nor
Not
would,
one.
Nor would water have flowed through their meter.
No,
None.
no.
But if that's on the resident property, that's what the city does, they come out and fix your pipes?
No.
No. Only if it's on the city side, we
But,
fix our
but
side.
the city came out and fixed it, not from.
On your side, on your private property?
This is what I'm saying. See, I'm getting two different messages here. He told me today that the resident will not be billed anything because it was on the city's right of way. Now, I'm familiar with the meter here. Anything from this point back that way, usually the residents, unless that pipe extends
No.
and go into the resident, usually I don't think it's that way.
No.
But I'm just saying.
It's an absolute point. The meter comes from the water main. It comes up to the meter. That's all ours,
Right.
including the meter.
Right.
Okay. Everything after the meter is all yours, and we don't ever do anything with that. That's
And we
that's a-
didn't.
I know that.
We did not. We did not fix any pipe on your property. Anything after the meter
Who
would have
fixed
been on
it?
you. It wasn't your pipe that was broken. It was the city's pipe before the
See
meter.
what I'm saying? I don't.
So is there an easement or something there with city water that's
This
on
don't
his
make sense.
property?
You're
I
saying
mean,
two
is that-
different
We
things.
have,
It's a right of
it's in
way.
our right of way.
Yeah, so I mean, but you're saying that we fixed something on your property?
Yes, they fixed it twice. Once in
No.
February, once in.
That wasn't your pipe. That was before the meter. That was the city's water line that broke.
This is what I'm saying. But when you came out to fix it in February and in, I guess, March, I've said, because you asked me, do you think he didn't turn it off? Who benefited from it? I said, well, maybe the city left it on when they went out to repair the pipe.
The city would have had no reason to turn your water back on to fix a pipe
And
that was before your meter.
I understand. That's the
I don't
rule.
think you do understand.
No, I understand. But I'm hearing what you're saying. That's not what you told me today.
Okay.
Mr. Williams, at the end of the day, did you have any flooding? Or
Yes,
is
there
this-
was flooding.
Okay, we do have an ordinance where you can get half of it written off.
No, the flooding was caused by
That's-
the water main.
Okay, so, but this,
by
not
his.
into your house?
No.
No, that's
Okay.
the thing.
It was in the.
Okay.
It's on our side,
Right.
not on his side. So
In
it's
the
I
going
guess
to the
I guess
meter.
I need to take a picture of it and show you and measure everything because that's kind of irrelevant because we're not here talking about really my issue not about the pipe bursting and what side it on. We talking about the tampering with the meter. That's why I'm really here.
Okay,
Okay.
we didn't turn the water back on.
He didn't turn it back on either.
Well,
That's what he says.
who did?
You tell me.
You
Because
tell
he
me.
told me, I tell you the truth, I don't even know how to get down there and turn on the thing. I know they got tools you can put on there and twist it and turn, but
No,
then
they can do
they
it
replace
different.
meters. But I'm not, like I say, it's not the issue. I don't mind paying it because sometimes it
What
is
are-
easier to pay it and move on because a lot of things can escalate behind stuff like this.
But what our attorney just told you was that the presumption is on the person that benefited. The responsibility is on the person that benefited.
But if
from
he
that.
paid for those damages, he paid for the water that he consumed.
He didn't pay for tampering with the meter.
Oh, Lord. You can't prove he tampered with it. That's just an assumption.
We'll have
But
to
don't get me wrong, I have heard right here in these same chambers, one of your magistrates said one time, it was dealing with me with an issue about some certified mail. I received 2 letters from the city. One, I received, the lady was just too lazy to get out and knock on the door for me to sign for it. And I was just too stubborn to go to the post office to retrieve that. Okay? Then she came back again with another letter. She came out and knocked on the door. Then I responded to that. And that had something to do with the last one. Now, they didn't want to hear my issue, but all they was doing is trying to prove that I signed for that letter. Now, you know the procedure when you sign for certified mail is documented. They couldn't prove it because I explained to them I didn't sign for it. I didn't receive it. But where we have what we call an assumption of the law. And I'm going to leave it right there, okay? Now, if I have to study law books and all that, I'll do what I have to do. So we talking about $100. My son told me he didn't do it. Now, if one of his friends did it and he's still liable, that's a different issue. But what if the city did mistakenly turn it on? If you fix a pipe, you have to turn the water on to make sure it's fixed.
Mr. Williams, one more time. There was no reason for us to turn that water on because we weren't fixing anything past the meter going to your house. We were fixing the water line in the right-of-way before the meter. Well, there was no reason to touch your meter to turn it back on. We did not do it. I don't know how I can make it plainer for you. We didn't turn it on. There was no reason to turn it on. We didn't need to turn it on.
How far from the road do they usually put the meters, is the right-of-way? Is it 15 feet from the center or 15 feet from the edge of the road?
It varies.
It varies.
Yeah,
It
it's
depends
different
on the.
everywhere,
It's very-
especially if you
But
live
what
in a
I'm
real
saying
old house.
is the damages was done inside the yard. It wasn't out there where meters usually
Because the
be.
water line was in the front of your yard and the water line flooded your front yard, not the water line coming into your house. Our water line broke out there. We fixed that water line. We never had to touch your meter.
Okay, well, regardless, the same pipe that you fixed, so that's an admission that there was a pipe that burst. So it still flooded, whether it was on the city side or not. It flooded the yard. It washed away a lot of the dirt. And you know, if you know anything about construction, like the sidewalk, the walkway, if dirt is not under it, you can take a little hammer and tap it and break it. It's easy. So the dirt has to be replaced. 2 washes probably within a month. So that was another issue, the flooding of the yard. Regardless of where the pipe was, and you just said it was the city pipe on the city side. So, but it flooded the yard. Now, as far as that, the thing, I would like to see a bill like that since October, no money on it, but the water was on. I don't know how many days when the city turned it off. I don't know how many days expired. But when I learned of it Sunday, I was right there first thing Monday morning. This morning, rather, see, because I'm getting a little dementia here, but I have to write some things down.
So,
But-
Mr. Williams, I think what staff can give you downstairs is a monthly consumption of what has actually gone through the line to your house that was after the meter. So if there was
He got that
flooding
today.
done on your side or extra in your yard, it'll show average-wise, more water was consumed that month than the month before that, and that'll tell you how much time that thing was flooding there. That was on the city side, obviously, we fixed that.
Right.
But if it flooded on your side, then that's the average, that there's more consumption on his end at the fault of the city, right?
There was.
No.
No, it didn't flood inside, but what he's saying is that the meter that we had on our side, that, not the meter, but the water lines that we had on our side, we're responsible for.
Correct.
Anything after the meeting, you're responsible for. Am I understanding you to say that when the city's water meter or the water pipe burst, whatever, it flooded into your yard, it wasn't water that you actually got billed for?
No, but I'm not talking about
Okay, that's
that.
what
I'm
I was
talking
trying to
about
get
the
at.
flooding is the issue there.
Okay,
The flooding itself.
What's wrong with the flooding?
What
What's
did it
wrong
do?
with the flooding?
What?
When it wash away your yard, it's just like when you pick up the trash with the bucket truck. After a while, they
How long did it sit there flooding?
gash in your yard.
How long was it sitting there?
Now that I don't know. Like I said, I only heard of this on Sunday when my son called me.
Okay, so
Sunday.
are you saying that you're saying that there's damage to your yard now because of the flooding? Is that what you're trying to say?
Yes, because it occurred twice. It's a big.
So are you trying to get the city to fix that damage? Is that what you're asking?
All I'm saying is, if I have to, I'll pay for a load of dirt myself. Like I say, I'm learning not to let little things like that. You know, I live in this city. I don't want to feel like somebody got it out for me.
So I have a question for David.
'Cause I pay
He
for it
says that
myself.
this has burst twice on the city side. Am I
Yes.
understanding that? So is there something wrong with that pipe that it keeps bursting? And I mean, is he the victim of a
I don't know the exact situation, circumstances. I'll have to find that out.
Okay.
This all came to me at 4 o'clock this afternoon.
Okay.
Well, obviously, there's nothing that can really be done here tonight.
No.
But you will look into it. Probably talk to, is it be Robert
Well,
or
I think
Josh?
he's wanting you to waive the fee.
Right.
'Cause he doesn't want it,
Exactly.
But I would recommend strongly against that.
I have no intention of doing that. Does anyone
Okay.
else have any intention of doing that?
No,
We-
I listened to the city attorney's guide on that, and we cannot be responsible for it, because every time someone gets their water turned off and they didn't do it, then
Right.
we're gonna be on the hook for it forever.
That's one of the laws written that way.
Yeah, have you thought of doing automatic debit for the water bills? That way, if, you have any issues with water bills, it just automatically debits it. They have that at City Hall. I think you get money off if you sign up for that.
$2 or $3.
Yeah, but that adds up. I mean, that's a nice little lunch at Red Lobster.
What's your address again, Mr. Green?
208 East Green Street.
208.
The address.
But the
the-
problem
not
occurred
bad.
at 39 Metcalf.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
39
What's the
minutes.
address at Metcalf?
39.
Okay, I'm sorry. I didn't
Now, why
hear
did you
that.
want my address?
He wants to go see the damage.
Yeah,
It's not at my address.
No,
Want-
at the 39 Metcalf.
Metcalf.
that's
Okay.
where
Am
they
I
go.
right, Stanley?
Yeah.
Anything else?
So,
Mr.
but like I
Williams?
said, now in September, I called the city to come out and turn my water off. Okay, I had a problem there. Now, I was home all day, and nobody from the city came to turn my water back on.
Mr. Williams.
Nobody turned it back on,
Are-
but it got on.
Are you saying that the water went into the residence
No.
at
No, just the
39?
yard.
Wait, let me
Okay,
finish.
sorry.
39 Metcalf after it was cut off. The
No,
water,
not after it was cut off, while
when-
it was flooding.
it went in the house?
No, not the house, just the yard.
Okay, so you're only talking about a load of dirt to fix the yard.
Yes, that's it.
You're not talking about waiving no fees for tampering with the
Well,
meter?
well, that was my main issue because he told me he didn't do it, and I'm saying that maybe, maybe like Mr. Flowers said, maybe there's no reason for the workers to turn the water off to fix the pipe.
But my question is, the water went into your house. Forget the flooding. The water went into the faucets and whatnot. Is that what you're saying? And
Went-
your son
went
could
into the
flush the
faucets.
toilet?
Yeah.
Yeah. Could he flush the toilet? Could he drink the water and all this?
He had water.
He had water.
He had water. They say he consumed
So he
3,000
He
gallons.
consumed the water. He was the recipient of the water.
He was, yes, like Mr. Flowers said, who benefited from it? He, of course, that's a duh question
Yeah.
to me.
But I just have
Well,
one
he
last
benefited
question,
from
and
it.
this will settle it for me.
That was paid.
Just a quick question. You're saying that no one turned the water back on. Do we turn off the water when we're working on the pipe?
There would have been no reason to turn that water off going to his house.
Not turn it off
See-
while it was going into
Turn
his
it off
house?
Turn it
There's
on.
no
There would have been
reason.
no
Okay,
reason.
so
We didn't touch
then,
it.
so if he's saying it was on and he didn't turn it off, then you never turned it off. It was always on.
No.
No. We cut it off for non-payment of bill.
That's the
okay.
issue,
Okay.
is it's turned off for non-payment. Somebody turned it on.
Somebody
and he got
turned
the
it back
benefit
on.
of that because it was not, the bill was not.
So the
paid.
repair of the pipe had nothing to do with the
No.
When we turned the
Separate
water,
issue, separate issue.
separate
when we
issue?
turned the water off, we read the meter.
Okay.
When we went back out, we inspected it and found out that he had turned it back on and it had used 3,000 gallons. Somebody turned the valve back on. That was why he was charged the additional $100. I contacted him to get involved in this because he became irate about it and didn't like it. He was irate with me on the phone this afternoon. But the bottom line is, I contacted him to tell him that we could arrange a payment plan for the $100. He's disagreeing with it. He doesn't believe he should have to pay the $100. That's our policy.
All right. Mr. Williams, nothing's going to be done with that $100 fine. You're still going to be liable for that fine. We are going to go out and take a look at the damage, see if we need to do anything about the damage to the yard, but nothing will be done about the $100.
Okay, well, I appreciate y'all giving me an opportunity to talk.
Yes, sir.
Didn't fail but a try in my book.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming.
That concludes our regularly scheduled agenda. Is there anything else to bring before the city, Stanley?
Stanley said he had something.
I was just going to ask you, where do we stand with those trees on Florida and DeSoto? I mean, does it take a letter sending it to that grove owner to get those cleaned up or not? You know, last time I talked to you, you told me you thought that was a violation of code.
It is.
I know it is, but I think those people, I won't be calling any names of that citrus owner, but I think he's a proud person.
Yes, he
and
is.
I think if we get a letter to him and tell him we mean business, we want
That's
that
been
cleaned
done.
up, I think it'll get done.
Code enforcement has contacted him. He has assured us he will be working on it.
Okay.
David, I have a question for
I'm not
you.
finished. Let me
Oh, I'm
finish,
sorry.
and then I'm gonna shut up.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No,
I
you're
thought you was finished.
Would it be possible for me to get a roster of every city employee that we have today and their job title and their salary, plus what they were doing on the last pay cycle for the former city manager, June Fisher? Can I get that?
Okay, say that again now.
That'd be December.
I would like a roster of every city employee we have,
Okay.
and I'd like to have it tell me how much money they're making today and how much money they were making on the last pay cycle for June Fisher.
Her last date of employment was November the 8th or 11th? I'm just throwing that out there.
David didn't take effect.
The legal day or the one she claims today?
Because everyone had a cost of living increase at the
Yeah, I
at the
just wanna
beginning
know
of the
where we're
year,
at with
so
that.
you're looking for right when she left.
I'm not up to anything underhanded. I just want to know.
Sure.
Okay. Anything
Right.
else, Stanley?
That's it. I'm done. I'm sorry, Brenda. You
One
go
second.
ahead now.
Brenda, you have something?
Yeah, I just want to ask you, where are we as far as the CDBG grant stands? What's the status on that?
It is in process.
Yep, they're moving forward.
We had the signed agreement from Tallahassee. We're getting ready to release the RFP, and some few loose ends. And once the RFP gets released, we should be moving along.
Thank you.
Okay. You have anything else?
No.
No, but Annie does.
Anna? It's Anna Marie, who resides at?
234 East Camphor Street, Avon Park. Tonight, I'm just going to give you a quick update from the Battle of the Bands.
Okay.
We did our first inspection of the War Dog Memorial. Nobody's tampered with it. Nobody's messed with it. We have changed, in fact, all 7 flags because due to the fact that they're outside, they get beat up pretty quick. The only thing I see that I'm not sure if they took care of it yet is the grass around it really hasn't been trimmed back. And I saw like roots of grass growing up onto the concrete. So, but aside from that, it's looking good and it's going to stay looking good. And we still have on the table of our board the 3 chess and checker tables, concrete chess and checker tables that in future I'd like to discuss. The 2 that we wanted to put on Veterans Square and the one at the Veterans Triangle on the south side. But that's the update from the Battle of the Bands. And like I said, the monument's doing fine. Thank you.
Okay, before we talk about that, obviously you would want to get with staff, show them exactly where you're going to put them, so they can have time to do all their back end stuff.
Oh, I'm going to set up a full presentation of space and what would need as far as concrete to be under them and everything.
Okay.
But we do have them already. We found a fabricator for those chess and checker tables. So,
Good.
all righty, thank you.
Excellent. Is there anything else to bring before the city?
Last thing, where do we stand with the city attorney hooking up with Nucor or getting with the DEO, and what goes first? Do we need to discuss with Nucor the contract with them, or do we need to go to DEO
Yeah,
first?
that's based on what I heard earlier. We have to get our utility contract going with Nucor, and then we can finalize the agreement with the county, interlocal with the county, and the also the.
You're talking Polk County or Highlands County, because some of the utilities go on county property right now.
Well, I'll have to look at that. You know, if it's with Polk County, it's Polk County, but we can get our local agreement with whoever we're gonna be working with on that rights away and so on. Okay?
Okay. Anything
So,
else?
okay, no, that's it.
Is there anything else to bring before the city? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Seeing no opposition, we are adjourned.